Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the penultimate round. I can't believe I'm saying these words at the moment. Round 9 out of 10 for the Simsport Racing ACC Season 3 for GT3, taking place here in the Montmeló region of Spain at the Circuit de Catalunya, Barcelona. Alex Goldschmidt and Steve Proudly back with you once again. Good evening, Steve. How are you, my friend? You keeping well?
I'm keeping very well, Alex, and 18 weeks, where has it gone since we started round 1 of this amazing season? That's proved exciting at times, a little bit risky with some of the moves now and again, but generally fantastic racing, buddy.
Yeah, I can't believe that. 18 weeks ago, I joined Simsport Racing as the only person in the commentary box and did the first 90-minute race at the Nurburgring, and then glad to have Steve alongside me for the remaining 16 weeks. But obviously, this is the penultimate round of the season. There are titles that could be decided this evening. So let's have a look at the points coming out of Laguna Seca. So Chris Crossman finally got the upper hand on Archie Clifford Roberts by a considerable margin and also took pole position. Archie Clifford Roberts, you know, he's been Mr. Consistency this season so far, took 44 points. James Hartnell from Tempesta Racing, who is literally in the battle for second and third position with Chris Crossman coming into this round. The Hartnell is ahead by about 18 points, but, you know, Steve Haley, Dean Riley had a great performance. The number 2 Tempesta Racing Ferrari there, Steve. Dave Hedges, Charlie Crossland from Team Fordzilla, Rich Smith, Regan Mitchell, Bliv AK, Gavin Utley, Roberto Santoro, Adam Misalovic. Obviously, for those wondering about the penalties, you had that. The editors lead by 127 points coming into the penultimate round of this season. They could sew the team championship up tonight, but it depends on what Tempesta Racing do with their 2 drivers. Hitotsuyama in third place. BD Racing with Chris Crossman, they're very much their talisman, could possibly get the jump on them going into the final round at Paul Ricard in a couple of weeks' time. RPM Racing on 350 points. The Sol Barwell Motorsport car, courtesy of Lukasz Karkos, rounds out the top 6 ahead of RS Motorsport. And the championship here, Steve, this is the biggest talking point. Archie Clifford Roberts could have one hand on the title this evening here at Barcelona, but it is more about the battles between the likes of James Hartnell and Chris Crossman. Then you look from 4th, where Regan Mitchell is, Dave Hedges, Steve Haley, Aaron Walker. They're all in the shot of getting within the top 4. Even Dean Riley in 8th position. It just shows how close this championship has been so far, hasn't it?
It has, absolutely. I mean, James Hartnell, he's in the second half of this season, he seems to have come alive. Chris Crossman won the opening round at the Nurburgring and then won the last round at Laguna Seca, so he's not out of the championship yet. And there's 75 points on the line this evening for this 90-minute race that we've got going on, so that's a lot of points. That's a big haul. They're going to be battling for it, and like you say, they're battling all the way down the table at the moment.
Well, we're now into qualification. They actually got the jump on us on this one. So we got to about 12 minutes and 40 seconds still to go. Chris Crossman by 90 thousandths ahead of the driver on your screens, the number 96 of Archie Clifford Roberts. Then it's James Hartnell, just 0.39 seconds adrift in third. Steve Haley rounds out the top 4. Charlie Crossland, he's showing a really good pace in the number 66 Team Fordzilla Audi, rounding out the top 5. But Crossman leading the way so far. And the times have been very, very competitive in free practices, Steve. But also when you look at the top 16 all the way down to Martin Dorgala in the number 488, they are covered by just over 1.7 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. And as ever, say it every week, there has been an awful lot of practice going on. These guys do take this very seriously, and they put in hours and hours, laps and laps of practice. And Barcelona, has to be said, it's amongst the drivers' favourite tracks. It's a really nice, fast-flowing track with some really great fast corners, technical sections, and then obviously the start-finish straight flat out into Turn 1 is an absolutely awesome experience.
I think one of the highlights for me is when they come out of Kamsa at the top part of the circuit, and then you've got that blast when you're starting from around third gear at 160 Ks and you're going all the way down to La Cagsa, where you're going up to around 230 kph in fifth gear. You're braking all the way down the gearbox down into first gear at 70 Ks, which is the slowest corner on the circuit. We will show you the hot lap a little bit later on. Good evening to Cameron Fife. Yeah, we're both all fine, Cameron. Looking forward to seeing how you get on in the penultimate round of GT4 next Wednesday, as that hits its penultimate round, the 5th out of 6 rounds for Season 2 of GT4, and it's really been good to see. That's been ultra competitive as well. We've now got Jeffrey Wolf in the 86 Car Guy Racing Ferrari 488. He's just under 1.3 seconds off the pace.
Yeah, Jeffrey Wolf's been an improving driver throughout the season. That's not to say he started off badly, but he's, he really comes into his own, and he seems to sort of, work his way into a race, and he gets better as the race goes on. But it'd be nice to see him get a reasonable sort of qualifying position and get towards the sharp end a bit quicker, because I think he's a driver to watch for the future.
Yeah, there are some drivers that have improved. Dean Riley, who had a fantastic performance last time out, is currently 7th on a 144.139. Rich Smith, our winner last time out at his first ever Simsport Racing win, last time out when we went to Zandvoort for Season 2 GT4 Round 4 at Zandvoort. He's currently running at the top 14 in the sole Lexus RCF GT3 that is on this grid, and Rich was so let's have a look back at that moment just briefly as we see Dave Hedges on our screen at the minute. But Rich is he could not really, I don't think he found the words of how to describe the pure elation that he had after 45 minutes, banzaiing through the middle of the rest of the field, going around the outside of Tarzan and picking up his first win within the Simsport Racing community. That does a lot of for a driver in terms of confidence, and I'm sort of looking forward to seeing how Rich gets on here at Barcelona.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, because Rich is one of these guys. He's a real member of the community. He's on Discord most evenings, and he's on the servers practicing most evenings. And he's had a little bit of misfortune, shall we say, in some of the early races where he's picked up damage. He's had little off-track excursions. He's a very quick driver. And if he can just sort his qualifying out again and just get into that top 10 maybe, which he's very capable of doing, he could have a good race.
Good evening to Dave Jones. A big thank you to everyone that is currently watching via the relevant Facebook, Twitch and YouTube streams as well, which includes Let's Race, the Virtual Reality Racing Club, Thrill Junkies, the Simply Race Twitch and YouTube channel, Downforce Racing, amongst other platforms, and looks to me that we have Kevin Critchley. Evening, gents. Great quality stream as always. A pleasure to have you with us, Kevin. But also another driver that does really need a bit of a mention here, Bliv AK in the 747. He's really started to get to know that Titan known as simply as Godzilla, and he's put in some stellar performances as well, isn't he?
He has. He's really, like you say, he's got to know that car throughout this season, and round by round he's getting quicker and quicker. As he said in his own words, he's learning how to set that car up and the characteristics of that car, and I think he's really getting to grips with it now, and he's showing us some great times. Let's not forget the two guys, Pixley and Parker, who are showcasing the Jaguars for us, and credit to them. They've not got the most competitive car, but they turn up round after round, and they do it some justice. They've had some good rounds, some bad rounds, but they're here, in the Jag, the only two guys to pick it in the field.
Yeah, I think Pixley had a really good standout performance at Monza, if memory serves me correctly. So, this car, if you get it right with the Jaguar, it is literally like putty in your hands. But, like, say, a technical track, because there's a lot of sweeping corners here, Steve, and it's about having the car that's going to have the right combination of both stability but also maneuverability in terms of how the cars maneuver around the circuit. And that's one of the big things, because this is a 90-minute endurance race. There are 2 mandatory pit stops, and we've seen it where like say at the Nurburgring, the first round, we saw how much these drivers are putting in those dedicated hours. They're spending evenings, they're spending weekends. Just as you said, Rich Smith, perfect example, putting in the sim time, putting in the seat time, making sure that they're doing everything in their power to make sure that they have a good race, but also a competitive one. And then also that's where the training and the mental and the physical aspects in terms of the consistency when it comes to lap times too.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to find the sweet spot in the setups for these cars. You know, there is a sweet spot to find on them, and then it's just about fine-tuning them at each track. And as you say, the practice makes perfect, because it's not just the driving style, the technique, and the setup. It's the concentration. You know, for 90 minutes, you're concentrating 110%, plus the qualifying session, obviously. So close on to 2 hours concentration. It's draining, and it takes some doing.
Yeah, well, as we go on board with Regan Mitchell in the number 69 Mercedes AMG GT3, Steve, just keep your eyes on the gap between Pinchbeck, Crossland, Mitchell, Riley and Ruddock. That is incredibly intense there, as Steve Haley now puts his way up into 5th place on a and that is on a 1:43.971 is his lap time so far. So he rounds out the top 5, but Pinchbeck, Crossland, Mitchell, Riley and Ruddock, and that's changing all the time as Ruddock now goes P6, so that's another Lamborghini that we actually have. Now, one of the big things here is that that makes it 2 Lamborghinis for the first time this season. So because Jordan Ruddock has now jumped into the Lamborghini, hasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, Jordan, he's only raced a couple of times. I believe he was in the Ferrari at the beginning of this season.
Yes,
is that
he
right?
was.
Yeah. So the Simsport rules are that you can change car in the season, but you will be minus 50 points on your championship standings. Obviously, he's taken that hit. He's here to enjoy himself. He's missed a lot of rounds, so he's not really fighting for any sort of championship. But yeah, it's good to see 2 Lamborghinis on the grid. And I'm just looking at the top 12 are all more or less within a second now. Just live rounding out at with about a 10th out, and I think it's going to get closer than that, to be honest. We've got another 4.5 minutes to go, and there's Crossman's really taking it to Archie, coming off the back of that win at Laguna and currently on pole position.
Yeah, Lukas Karkos looks to be a danger driver in this one. The number 13 Barwell Motorsport Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo, now 3rd on a 1:43.674. These times are literally coming in thick and fast, which demotes Hartnell down to 4th. Haley, who's on your screens, is currently 5th, and he goes 3rd. And look, it's changing all the time. Karkosh has just gone to provisional pole with just over 4 minutes to go, a 1:43.320. It seems like the Huracan loves the circuit here at Circuit Catalunya Barcelona. Pinchbeck in 6th place, Ruddock down to 7th. Mitchell, look, top 11, Steve, 0.909 of a second, and it's all being rounded out by Dave Hedges in the 88 Audi. I mean, that is incredible. I mean, between 1st and 2nd, it's 48 thousandths. It's a 10th covering the top 3. Haley's a further 81 thousandths adrift. I mean, you can't... I think this is going to be the closest qualifying session when it comes to deciding who's going to take pole position, and this is for 1 point on the standings, and also it's the penultimate round of the season.
Yeah, absolutely, and Charlie Crossland's just popped it back up into 5th place again, so he's another one that's improved on his time. It's that top 10 at the moment. They are sort of switching around places, they're finding the feet, they get the tracks evolving and coming to them, and they're really sort of getting those times in now. And when you throw into the fact in the race we've got those 2 pit stops, as you said, there's no mandatory tyres, it's just you've got to take some fuel, so the strategy's wide open as well, as long as they do 2 pit stops. But it's the strategy's going to play a big part of this tonight.
And we've seen that before on previous races. I think, my first ever taste of Simsport Racing was at the first round 18 weeks ago at the Nurburgring, the Grand Prix circuit, 90-minute endurance encounter, and I really enjoyed every single second of it. Here's Chris Crossman. 48,000 separates him, and 49,000 separates him from provisional pole. We've got 2 minutes and 15 in the session to go. So at the moment, top 10, it's Karkosh, Crossman, Clifford Roberts, Haley, Crossland, Hartnell, Pinchbeck, Ruddock, Mitchell and Hedges now rounding out the top 10 positions, as Crossman now comes through into the chicane RACC, which is effectively the Spanish I think it's the Motorsport Federation, if memory serves me correctly. Through New Holland comes Chris Crossman. Does the number 3 Porsche improve? Well, that was a 1:44.529, so that is about 1.2 seconds off of his best lap time so far. So Chris Crossman, if he's lucky, he's going to get another 2 flying laps out of it as he goes through into Elf, which is the first turn at the right-hander. Steve Haley in 4th place. 0.183 seconds down off of Łukasz Kakos, who could secure a maiden pole for Season 3 GT3. And Haley just up ahead looks to have Adam Isolovic in the 111 Ferrari, who is currently 2.13 seconds off of the pace down in 23rd position. But at the moment, the top 21 rounded out by Mark Neutelings in the 666 Bentley, covered by just under 1.95 seconds as we go into the last 60 seconds of qualification. Steve, I'm not going to ask you who you think is going to be on pole position, because I think that's a bit too much of a difficult question to ask, to be fair.
It is. All I will say is, I don't think it's beyond Archie. This one, he may still be out there and get another lap in there. Crossland's in the pits, so I think he's maybe finished. But just welcome to Gene Pinchbeck on the chat tonight, saying, "Come on, Pinchy, you can do this." Steve Hinden, thanks for the comments, mate. And yes, it is a blistering time from Crossman. He is really on the pace, but obviously just been beaten by Kakos. So I mean, just going to Pinchbeck in the Audi, since he switched cars to the Audi, he was in the Aston at the start of this season. He's really gelled with that Audi, and he's been pretty consistent as Chris.
Well, he's been running in the top 10 in terms of qualification, and also having some great finishes, running as high as in the top 5 at certain rounds, as now the timer hits 10 seconds to go. And I think Crossman will cross the line with 4 seconds on the clock remaining. So he's got another chance, effectively, because for those wondering, you've got the max weight time up at the top there. But Crossman, Clifford Roberts will take the inside of row 2. And Steve, he got to within 20 thousandths of Chris Crossman. And this is the driver we really need to keep on board with at the moment. He's now I'm hoping that this is going to be a really good lap from Chris, because he's got half a tenth to find to pit Łukasz Kakos, who is, I think, still out on the circuit at the moment. And now we get the driver's eye point view directly from behind the steering wheel. He's now going to go through the left-hand kink up towards Wörth, and then it's a left-right complex here before the run-up to Kamsa. We'll just keep on board with Chris at the moment. I'm hoping this looks to be a pretty clean lap here, Steve, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely. Yeah, inputs are very smooth. He's keeping the lines right. It's what he's got to do. So I'm going to go from 5th down to 1st gear into La Cagsa, then into the Banque Sabadell after this right-left complex here. Kakos pits. Now it is all down to Crossman. And this is looking to be a very impressive lap. If he can get under a 1:43.320. Oh, he wrestles with the back end of the car. Going through the Europe car corner. Now through the chicane for the final time. Through the right-hander at New Holland. Crossman powers out of the corner in the Porsche. Will it be enough to take provisional pole here at Barcelona? It isn't. Not enough. That was a 1:43.866. So Łukasz Kakos takes a maiden pole position here in Season 3 GT3. What an effort from him. Absolutely fantastic. I mean, Chris Crossman, I think he just lost a bit there in Europa car. Just got a bit squirrely there, lost some traction, and probably lost a few thousandths coming out of there. But otherwise, it's been a very, very interesting qualifying. Good to see Lucas back. And he's a quick driver, is Lucas. He's a driver that hasn't been able to compete at every round, but when he does, he usually puts on a good show for us.
Mm-hmm. Well, to really give you an idea of just how technically demanding this circuit is, let's have a look at the hot lap here of Circuit de Catalunya Barcelona, here for round 9. Welcome on board a lap of the Circuit de Catalunya Barcelona, 2.892 miles on the Audi R8 LMS GT3 as we head towards Elf for a hot lap, braking all the way down from 6th at 261 kph, all the way down the gearbox to 3rd at 120 through Elf. Through the next left at around 135 kph. As you start to build the speed for Renault, you're going to take this at full commitment, 3rd gear, 160 kph. Now a short blast up to the next corner, known as Repsol, braking from around 4th gear at 220 kph, all the way down to 2nd at around 62 miles an hour. Then it's up the gears up to 3rd. Up to fourth, braking for around 190, down to second gear at 90 kph as you go through Sayat. Now there's a slight left kink on the approach through to Verth, but you get to go up all the way to 200 kph in fourth gear before braking down to second at 110. Now through the next right-hander, on your way to Kamsa, which will be taken at around third gear, 160 kph, lifting off the throttle slightly from 185 as you now head towards the far part of the circuit. A nice bit of a long back straight here, getting all the way up to fifth gear at around 230 kph before you put on the anchors all the way down to first gear, 70 kph, the slowest corner on the circuit. Now the last few complexes here at Barcelona, through the Banc Sabadell at around second gear, 100 kph. Now into the next right-hander, which takes you through to Europe Car, taken at second at 110. Then it's through the chicane RACC, taken at second gear between 75 and 85 kph, depending on how brave you are. Through to New Holland, the final corner on the circuit at around 170 kph in third gear as you power across the line. In fourth at 215 kph, and that's a 1:44.8 second lap time. Like from a driver's perspective on how challenging this circuit is going to be over the next 90 minutes. And Steve, obviously the drivers, they're just a couple of moments away for getting onto the formation lap. But what can we expect in terms of how the cars are going to handle, you know, like say for instance, tyre degradation? Because this track can be abrasive, especially with the amount of right-hand turns. You've got a lot of change of direction. But also, the tyres and the brakes are going to suffer quite a bit in many respects around this 2.892 mile circuit.
Yeah, absolutely, because obviously it's effectively a sprint race with a couple of pit stops thrown in for good measure, so the guys are going to be pushing hard from the lights out to the checkered flag, and there'll be no respite. But, you know, the tyres, I think the strategy, just based on the races we've seen so far, most of them will take tyres, so they'll split the race in half. So I don't think tyres will actually be an issue at all, unless somebody decides they're going to run the full 90 minutes on one set and just take a splash and dash, as it were, for fuel at the pit stops. And just to give you an idea, to change tyres, they are 30 seconds stationary in the pits, plus obviously entry and exit time to add on top of that. Whereas you can literally add probably 10 litres of fuel in less than 10 seconds stationary time. You could, you know, they will have to add fuel because they can't do the full 90 minutes on the tanks they've got. But literally, you know, they could shave 15 to 20 seconds off a pit stop by not taking tyres.
Yeah, Jack Roderick says, amazing production, guys. Great to watch. Yep, always a pleasure, never a chore, Jack. But as you can see, the drivers are on the grid, ready to go. So it will be Lukas Kakos that starts from pole position as we are set for 90 minutes of racing action here in Spain. Chris Crossman in the number 3, looking to go for second in the overall standings, is ahead of the current championship leader, Archie Clifford Roberts. Then it's Stephen Haley, Regan Mitchell and Charlie Crossland rounding out the top 6, followed by Jordan Ruddock, Chris Pinchbeck, James Hartnell and Dave Hedges completing the top 10. Dean Riley, Peter Hrobar round out row 6, ahead of Bliv AK in the 747 Nissan, with Paul Lindsay in the 21 Porsche alongside. Adam Isalovic and Sebastian de Tolonera round out row 8, ahead of Rich Smith, Jeffrey Wolf, Ranjiv Kalsi and Reese Wiggin that complete the top 20. This is quite interesting, Steve. Jack Roderick again has just said, I would love to enter the next season of this if it runs on Sundays again. Well, I'm sure news will follow very soon, I would imagine, about season 4, Steve.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, one thing for sure, it will be on a Sunday. This is our GT3 evening, so it will be Sundays. We run fortnightly, so it's every other Sunday night we race. Just back to the standings, though. James Hartnell, he's given himself a little bit to do this evening, hasn't he? Qualifying down in 9th. And you know, most weeks you put me on the spot with a question at some point during the stream. Well, I'm gonna do it early doors. Porsche or Lambo first into T1?
I'm thinking it's going to be side by side. As much as I'd like to say yes, well, I'm going to give the Lamborghini the benefit of the doubt because I want to see Lukas go into turn 1 leading. So it just depends on who gets the better start off the line. But in some respects, Crossman will have the advantage because he's got a rear-engine car. It is rear-wheel drive. And the Lamborghini is mid-engined rear-wheel drive. So you've got two completely, slightly different powertrain powertrains in terms of the organisation of how the engines are mounted, whether it helps the centre of gravity. But I know for a fact that Chris Crossman will not want to be in second place coming to T1, and neither does he want Archie Clifford Roberts to go up the inside of him in that sort of respect either.
Yeah, and absolutely. And as Kev Critch obviously points out on chat, the Porsche is slightly shorter gearing as well, so it will just accelerate that bit quicker. It's still going to be a tall order because obviously he's going to be coming from a shade behind to get into that first corner. But this track, is as fast as it is and as wide as it is still a difficult track to overtake, and I think we'll see most of the overtakes into turn 1 tonight. That'll be the hotspot for passes, obviously with the slipstream down into T1 and where it favours the brave, as it were.
Yeah, I think even on the slight backs, the slight back straight you've got as well, going through Campsa and into La Caixa, that's an opportunity as well if you can nail it. But that's about an overtake about precision. But
yeah. I think it's fairly, well, I say this as from a commentator's point of view, it's easy to say, but I think it's fairly easy to defend that move, to be honest, because it's not a move you can get done before you're into the turn. Whereas if you get a really good run out onto the start-finish straight through New Holland, and let's say the car in front maybe just is compromised ever so slightly, it's not impossible to get the move done before you enter turn 1.
Yeah. I mean, that's an incredibly long straightaway as well, because anything's fair in war and racing, as we are about to get things underway. They come through the RACC chicane here at the Circuit de Catalunya, Barcelona. 2.892 miles, 4.655 kilometres. They now start to make their way through the final corner. 90 minutes on the clock, 2 mandatory pit stops. We are about to get things going to green very shortly here in Spain for the penultimate round of Season 3 GT3. Who's going to get the run down to turn 1 and take the initial lead? It is about to get hot and heated under the collar. We go green, 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 and they put the accelerators to the floor. It's a rush down to turn 1. Kakos to the inside of Crossman, heading into T1 for the first time. Through into Elf. It looks like the Lamborghini's just got ahead. Clifford Roberts still ahead in third place. Haley just towards his outside as Kakos makes it through. Clifford Roberts trying to go around the outside of turn 2, up through into Renault, and it looks like Clifford Roberts has got the inside on Crossman, but Stephen Haley has to slot him behind the Porsche.
Yeah, that was awesome, absolutely awesome. I mean, Chris Crossman was dead alongside Kakos on the start there when the lights went green. I believe we've lost Blive K in the Nissan as well, which is a real shame because that guy was really getting to grips with that car. But yeah, Archie's the one that's capitalised on that start, and really, he's
turn around for Pinchbeck. Turn around for Pinchbeck, dropping him out of the top 10. He was running as high as 7th. Now wondering, was there a little bit of contact? There are multiple cars involved. There's a Bentley in there. That looks to be Gavin Utley. And Blive K's Nissan is a bit forlorn to the left-hand side of the circuit. Well, let's have a look at the replay here. And they're all scrambling for position. And Pinchbeck gets a turnaround by Crossland. So it spins him around, puts him in the harm's way of Dave Hedges. And I think Blive K is going to be pretty much on... Oh! Now Isalovic just tagged Utley. Well, that was an absolute carambolage. There was so much going on, I really couldn't keep up with what was happening there. So, Blive K out, Gavin Utley turned around. Pinchbeck turned around by the slightest of nudges by the 66 Audi of Crossland, who's now hounding Regan Mitchell. Going down the start-finish straight is now Clifford Roberts trying to assert his domination on the championship standings, heading into the final round at Paul Ricard. He's going to try and go towards the outside, but then has to cut back through Elf. Great defensive work there, Steve, by Lukasz Kakos, but I don't think Clifford Roberts is quite done yet, and neither is Chris Crossman in P3.
Yeah, absolutely. These guys are battling hard at the front now, and Crossman's staying in close attendance. It's going to be hard for Archie to get past that Lambo without him making a mistake, because Kakos is going to be he's going to have the legs on him, I believe, down the start-finish straight. So it's going to have to be a mistake or a dive into a braking zone for Archie.
Yeah, I think Lucas is making that Lamborghini as wide as humanly possible, and you can just see the run that the Lamborghini actually gets out of the corner in comparison with the Audi. Now, I wonder. Now, it looks like, Lukasz has got that Lamborghini set up quite differently to how we've seen previously, but he's kept Archie Clifford Roberts at bay, and they're about 0.2 of a second adrift of each other. Chris Crossman's a further 0.3 behind. Then you look back to Steve Haley's a further 8.5 off of, we'll make that 0.3. This is now closing on Chris Crossman, so Crossman in danger. But look at James Hartnell, he's already up to P7.
Yeah, they're all very close, and I was just watching James Hartnell there. He's the man that's benefited from the start as well as Archie, because he was down in 9th, I believe, so he's gained a couple of positions, and he's literally only 2 seconds off Crossland, so he's making up some good ground. But Haley and Mitchell in 4th and 5th are in close attendance of these front three guys as well.
Yep, so across the line to complete lap number 2. Lukasz Karkos and the Lamborghini still leads by nearly half a second ahead of Archie Clifford Roberts. Chris Crossman rounds out the top 3, followed by Stephen Haley, Regan Mitchell, James Hartnell. Peter Robard now drops to 7th, ahead of Dave Hedges, Dean Riley, Jeffrey Wolf now rounds out the top 10, ahead of Sebastian de Tolonera. I don't know how you're going to... That's another surname I'm going to have to learn now, crikey. All this international talent we have. I'll just call him Sebastian.
Just to mention Steve Haley as well, last lap he's set the fastest lap of the race with a 1:44.6.
Right, okay, we're going to have a look. Now, this is where Bliv AK, I think, might have unfortunately had his demise thrown in the general direction, as they're all going steaming into turn 1. And he gets a tag. Oh, that's from Paul Lindsay in the 21 Porsche, and it sends Bliv AK into the concrete wall hard. And that's his race done and dusted, and he's already pitted. That's a real shame for Bliv AK. He's been showing so much promise, and as we said earlier on, so much development, and knows that car like the back of his hand pretty much, as now Clifford Roberts starting to close once again on Lukasz Karkos. But Bliv AK, I mean, I just feel so sorry for the guy.
Yeah, he's just watching the replay again just so I can see it from another angle, but he just gets that tap as the Porsche tries to dive up the inside, and once he's had that tap with all those cars around him, he gets multiple contacts, which is going to create a lot of damage. So yeah, really sad to see.
Yeah.
As you say, he's put a lot of effort into that car, and he's been really making good ground with it.
I think Rich Smith had nowhere else to go, to be completely fair with you, and then I think that might have been the number 47 of Ranjiv Kalsi that that also came into contact with the 747. And Kevin Critchley actually makes a good point here. He says, as it stands, I think James needs 3rd to stop Archie from winning the championship. Oh, turn around for Clifford Roberts by Crossman. Oh, disaster for the championship leader. Kevin Critchley, you've definitely jinxed it there.
Yeah, and that was Hartnell just overtaking him in the background while he was turned sideways as well. So Hartnell is in front of him now. Yeah.
Oh, and there's more dramas. Oh, Lindsay, and that's Gavin Utley who's just ended up hitting the side of Ranjiv Kalsi was just there. So let's have a look. Okay, going into turn 1, he's heavy on the brakes. Chris Crossman, I think, just outbraked himself, and the slightest nudge on the back bumper, and it turns Archie Clifford Roberts 45 degrees to the right-hand side, pointing towards the exit of the first corner, and that has caused dramas. But we know that it's not about where you start, it's about where you finish, and we've still got over an hour and 23.5 minutes still to go.
Yeah, the one thing I'll take from that incident with Crossman and Archie is the great awareness that Steve Haley showed, because he was right up on their bumpers, and he managed to brake hard enough to avoid contact, albeit by a few inches, but he showed great awareness and skill. And just to also mention Jordan Ruddock, who obviously got caught up in an incident early on, because he qualified in the top 10. He's down in 17th, but he's just done the fastest lap of 1:44.2. So that's a man that's going to be climbing back through the field, one to watch.
Yeah, and in all honesty there, Steve, Chris Crossman actually was the one that ended up worse off, because Clifford Roberts still in 5th, Crossman now down in 8th place, and I don't think any one of us really saw that coming. Neither did Clifford Roberts, neither did Crossman. It is such a shame, but that now means that Steve Haley in the Hitotsuyama team now have an opportunity to strike back, as we're going to see a little bit more. There's a little dice there, so that was Ranjiv Kalsi. Paul Lindsay just literally, I mean, that's the second time that Gavin Utley has been in the wars. That Bentley must be heavily scarred after those 2 contretemps.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what was going on there. I think obviously Ranjiv was down the inside, which unsettled Lindsay, because I saw some sort of last-minute steering inputs to avoid contact with him, which put him into Utley. So I'm not sure, I don't think it's all down to Paul, that one, but I'm sure the stewards will be having a look at it.
Yeah, and I think there was one driver, I think post the previous round, actually did have a ban, didn't they? A one-race ban, if memory serves me correctly.
Yeah, one of the drivers, because he races in both our leagues, the GT4 and GT3, he served it in the GT4 league, so he was entitled to race this evening, but I don't think he's actually on the grid, so he's maybe chosen to call it a day for this one.
Yeah, so it's all changing, as now Lukasz Kakos has in his pocket a 1.625 second advantage over the driver in second position, which is Stephen Haley, as we go on board with Chris Crossman on the bottom right-hand corner. Top left, you can see Archie Clifford Roberts, and he's closing on James Hartnell. Clifford Roberts, I think after that slight touch from Crossman, has had him very much fired up in the 96 Audi. And now this is the time where he needs to start taking no prisoners, because look at it from this perspective, Steve. You've still got Regan Mitchell, Steve Haley and Lukasz Kakos, and they're not that far up the road, let's be honest.
They're not far up the road. There's 2 pit stops to go, but they're all pretty quick boys, so it's it's not going to be easy. And just a point, Crossman and Archie, that incident there, that is not an incident we normally see from these guys up front. They race within inches and even millimetres, at some of the rounds, and we don't see contact like that very often, but just really unfortunate for Archie and Crossman there.
Yeah, Joao Diaz in the number 26 Mercedes is in the pits, so I'm not too sure if there might have been some damage for the Mercedes itself. So that will basically mark off one pit stop.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt there, but Haley, he's on a charge for that first place because he's the first man to get into the 43s with the 143.8. Everybody else is circulating in the 44s and lower down the field 45s.
Well, he's taken pretty much, that's quite a significant amount of time. I count that to be over 0.6 of a second that Steve Haley has just taken out of Lukasz Kakos. Kakos did a 44.7. Yeah, like you say, Steve Haley, a 143.854. Clifford Roberts has just put in his personal best, a 144.214, and that was over 0.2. That was nearly 2.5 tenths quicker than James Hartnell. So Hartnell now will see a barrage of colour from an Audi just behind in the form of Clifford Roberts. So Hartnell knows that the championship leader is coming for him, and I think Regan Mitchell is also sensing that he's not going to be out of the woods, but it just depends on who can put their strategies into place here at Barcelona, as it looks like Charlie Crossland has also done a first pit stop in the number 66 Audi, all the way down in 21st position.
Yeah, sometimes it pays to mix your strategy up if you find yourself stuck behind cars, but I don't think Archie would really benefit from that, because he'd come back out obviously in the middle of the pack and against some maybe slower cars which would hold him up even more. So I think he'll try and stay out as long as possible and stick to his original strategy probably.
As Chris Crossman trying to hustle Peter Robar in the number 32 Audi. Up the inside goes the number 3 from BD Racing. Does he make the move, stick for P6? That's a great move, as we come to expect from Chris Crossman. Absolutely textbook. Just after the first corner of trying to initially get up close and personal with Robar, a couple of corners later there, Steve, that is textbook racing here at Simsport.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. These guys do race to a high standard, a high class, so it's, the mistakes are very, very rare from these guys. Certainly the top 10 guys, race clean every single week.
So Steve Haley has taken over 0.4 of a second on that last lap around out of Lukasz Kakos. And the gap now between the two leaders is just over 0.6. Haley in the Hitotsuyama number 24 Audi, trying to chase down Lukasz Kakos. So it is Lamborghini versus Audi as they come through the chicane. One more corner to negotiate, and you're going to see, just look how close it is, Steve. Great angles here by our broadcast director, Mike Yao from Simply Race. Absolutely fantastic. Gap now down to under half a second.
Yeah, Steve Haley's on the charge now, and he's got the momentum going, so he's really going to, start putting the pressure on Kakos. And the good thing for Steve is he's got 2.7 second gap back to Mitchell, so he's got some breathing room, he's got some space to launch an attack without worrying too much about who's behind him.
And then you look at the battle from 3rd, 4th and 5th between Mitchell, Hartnell and Clifford Roberts. They are separated by less than 8.5 tenths of a second between the trio, and that is going to quickly fire up, but it looks to have extended now as Hartnell's just lost a little bit of a gap there. So yeah, Hartnell went in a bit sideways, so that's what caused, so it must have caused a little bit of a tank slapper for the Ferrari. But Haley still pressurising Kakos as they now make their way over towards the second half of the circuit. Haley very, very much has got the bit between the teeth and is going for it, as we could have a change of the lead, possibly after just the first 15 minutes of this race. And look how close he gets up to Kakos in the braking zone there, Steve. That's impressive car control from Steve Haley.
Yeah, and the thing I am noticing with Kakos and Haley, they do, in some of the corners, they have very different lines. Kakos is taking quite a wide angle into some of the tighter corners where Steve's showing him his front and keeping a sort of a tighter line to the apex.
So we come through one of the chicanes here at the circuit and through New Holland, and the gap now under 4 tenths. Kakos and Haley. Now look, Regan Mitchell now comes into shot, and you can see the amount of distance that Hartnell has lost. The gap between 3rd and 4th is now over, well, it was over a second, it's now 9 tenths as the two leaders go through the first corner at Elf. And Haley again closing up on the braking zone. It's only a matter of time. It's not a case of if. It's going to be a case of when. Kakos has to really watch his back bumper, and he's having to do so now as they've just come through Renault, and then they're going to come through the right-hand hairpin through Repsol, taken at second gear at around 100 kilometers per hour. Gap now just over 3.5 tenths. But Kakos at the moment, Steve, is really impressing me so far, because despite the fact he had Clifford Roberts and Crossman behind him before they unfortunately came into contact, Haley has put the pressure on, and Kakos just seems to be absorbing it by the bucket load.
Yeah, Kakos is a Simsport racer of old. I've seen him race, and I've raced against him many times myself. He doesn't crack under pressure. He's a very consistent driver, a very clean driver, very fast driver as we see him. But you've not seen the best of Steve Haley yet. He's only just really got onto the back of him, and he will start applying a lot more pressure. I expect to see him running quite a bit closer to that Lamborghini.
Yeah, it's been at some points close to around about 2 tenths as Archie Clifford Roberts now closing on James Hartnell in the 168 Tempesta Ferrari entry. And just up ahead is the number 69 of the Mercedes of Regan Mitchell. They're embroiled in this battle for 3rd, 4th and 5th position. 1 hour, 14 minutes and 14 seconds still to go. Another lap set to be completed by the leaders. On to lap number 10.
Yeah, I mean, Steve Haley needs to get the job done as soon as he can, because at the moment they've got that gap back to Mitchell and Hartnell and Clifford Roberts, so he needs to get past him if he's going to go for the win tonight. And then he could, because we know he's got the pace on the Lamborghini, and he can maybe gap him if he gets in front and just build a cushion between Clifford Roberts, Hartnell, the guys that also could threaten him for the win tonight. But let's not, discount Kakos. He's there, he's in front, he put it on pole position, he's definitely quick.
He's done that on merit, let's not forget that either.
Absolutely.
But I think one of the biggest things here is the dirty air situation we have. And this is respective of any downforce related proposition when it comes to motorsport, such as Formula 1, such as Formula E. You also have this in GT3 too. And one of the biggest things that Steve Haley is not just combating about trying to get alongside and get past Lukas Kakos. He's the one travelling in the dirty air that Lamborghini is literally punching a hole through. So Haley, as much as he can, is trying to close on the straights. He's late braking into the braking zones, trying to hit the apexes correctly. But sometimes that is also another factor that the people watching at home that aren't aware of how realistic these simulations are, just how much these guys are pushing like absolute hooligans at the minute.
Yeah, and we've seen Steve Haley using every single inch of the track as he ran out really wide onto the curb in there, but all within track limits. And he's just got to try and stay as close as he can at this point behind Lucas to just take advantage of the slipstream, because where he is now, he's not close enough to get anywhere near alongside him. That's that's what he's got to do. He's really got to get tighter up in the last few corners.
So for those wondering about how you can tell who has and who hasn't had their 2 mandatory pit stops, well, it's the amber-coloured column just by the intervals on the left-hand side of the timing. So at the moment, Pinchbeck has taken a mandatory stop. Rich Smith, also Dean Riley, and Charlie Crossland is the highest placed driver that's taken a mandatory pit stop so far. So the Team Fordzilla driver currently running in 19th position at the moment. But this is a titanic battle for the initial throws here, as we are fast approaching the completion of 20 out of 90 minutes here at Circuit de Catalunya, Barcelona, for the third season of ACC GT3 here on Simsport Racing, the place to race. If you want to get involved, head to our official website at simsport-racing.com. You can also find the link for our community Discord server. And for those wanting to join us to register for future championships, please feel free to join us, and let's see how we can get you on the grid here at Simsport Racing.
Yeah, the fastest man on the last lap was Regan Mitchell, interestingly. He made up 4 tenths on Stephen Haley and pulled away a couple of tenths on James Hartnell. Arch Clifford Roberts also put a faster lap in than James Hartnell, so he's really on the back of James now and applying the pressure to that Tempesta Ferrari.
I think also, you remember what we say about endurance races? There's always one car that has a bigger fuel tank than anything else. Well, those are the Bentleys. Obviously, Gavin Utley, I don't know where he is at the moment in terms of his positioning, but Mark Neuselings, who was down in 21st after qualifying, now already up to P17 and is about just under 3.5 seconds behind Paul Lindsay. And we've seen it before from both Mark and also Gavin Utley here, Steve, that they've used those bigger fuel tank capacities to the Bentley's advantage.
Yeah, they have. They'll run a bit longer maybe on the fuel, or when it comes to a fuel stop, they take less fuel as well. They don't need to put as much in because the Bentley is pretty good on its fuel economy as well, interestingly enough. So it holds more fuel and it uses less fuel, which is makes it for a great endurance car. But in the 90-minute race we've got now, because of the 2 mandatory pit stops, that's negated somewhat just due to the fact that they do have to pit twice.
So Archie Clifford Roberts, well, hopefully lightning does not strike twice. Chris Crossman, but these two are now going at a really, really quick pace, and Chris Crossman's just spending a personal best of a 1:43.881. Archie Clifford Roberts last time out had a bit of a howler there, unfortunately, 1:45.462. So I don't know whether he had a slight mistake or there was an off-track excursion that could have caused him. So that's really put him into the clutches of Crossman once again. And this time it's battling over P5.
Yeah, I'm sure, like I said, that mistake, it's a rare one from Crossman, so I don't think it'll happen again. Obviously, I don't want to put the commentator's curse on, but just seeing in the chat, Gavin Utley had to retire from the race due to excessive damage, so Gavin, the Bentley, stopped circulating, unfortunately. Really, really sad when they have to retire like that, but, it is what it is. It's real racing.
Yeah, so now the real question that beckons is who is going to be the first one to put their eggs in all one basket and decide to blink first and put in their first mandatory pit stop. But now Haley closing once again on Lukas Kokos for the lead, as we have 1 hour, 8 minutes and 30 seconds still on the clock to go. Local server time 3:59 p.m. So under the fantastic Spanish sunshine, we are racing. And at the moment, Haley got that gap down to, I think, the closest margin so far between the two, just over 1/10.5 of a second. Deep into the brakes once again goes Steve Haley, as that's through Sayat. Now into the left, Kink heading up to Verth. Let's keep on board with Steve Haley for a little bit here, because you can just see how much commitment both he and Lukas Kakos, they are using every millimetre of circuit that they can without being sort of pinged for a track cut. Otherwise, that will give them an automatic drive-through. But straight up, great racing between these two. ever since we saw Steve Haley get into second place, Steve.
Yeah, and what I'm seeing from these onboard pictures is that the Audi's got a fantastic front end on it. When you're watching Steve turn it in, it's turning in so much better than the Lamborghini. Sorry, it's holding the apexes better on most of the corners, and it's allowing him to turn that bit tighter, which is allowing him. He's also braking that bit later as well, which is it's all adding up to him applying the pressure to Lucas.
Yeah, and he put his nose up the inside of the Lamborghini going through the first part of the RACC chicane. It seems like the Lamborghini has a bit more of grunt coming out of the corners, and Karkosh able to put the power down. Gap as they crossed the line was just over 4.5 tenths, and the gap between Haley and Mitchell now extends to nearly 1.5 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, you say extends there, Alex, but it was 2.7. So the fact that Steve's now caught up to Lucas, it's holding him up a bit, and Regan's now closing that gap down.
Very well put there. So I'm just having a look at the times. It was a 1:45.255 from Steve Haley. Mitchell did a 1:44.577. You're right. I think the dirty air not helping Steve. He's just got to try and just sort of chip away, hasn't he?
Yeah,
and that's the key point.
Yeah, and I think that the fact that they're battling a little bit now as well is that Lucas is going to be, looking a bit more in his at the rear view, and also he's going to be driving a bit more defensive, which will scrub a few tenths off here and there, and it's all going to allow Regan to catch up. And we've seen Regan do that race after race this season, haven't we? He's never to be discounted because he will close those gaps up.
Well, especially as he was the only one that had the, and I can use this term here because considering where we are, the cojones to use the Maserati MC GT4 in the first season of GT4, which had no ABS and no traction control. So we know how capable Regan is. As now Peter Hrobart coming under threat from Dave Hedges in the 88. So Dave has made some good steady progress as well in the meantime. Jeffrey Wolf rounds out the top 9 ahead of Jason Ruddock as well, and Daniel Parker has said he's had to retire his Jaguar, unfortunately. It's a real shame for Daniel there. So one of the Jaguars still running as Richard Pixley rounds out the top 20. I have noticed that Martin Durgala in the 488 has now pitted, as Dan Parker says that unfortunately it was not the return I was hoping for. Well, Dan, let's hopefully see you on the grid very soon, buddy.
Yeah, poor old Dan, a return from an injury caused by a hamburger. We'll say more later, maybe, but yeah, not the return.
Off air.
But no, it's a good battle, and Hedges is in the pit. He's chose to take one of his pit stops now. Obviously, 25 minutes into the race, so interesting strategy from Hedges. Yeah,
I think also, well, you've got to look at it from this sort of perspective that both he and Archie are not just looking, Archie's just not looking at the title itself, but they're also looking at the team's title. And it's quite interesting how, we are at the penultimate round of the season. Hartnell's ahead of Clifford Roberts, but I'm not too sure whether it's going to be a bridge too far for James to be able to close that gap, because that's quite substantial. I mean, 75 points up for grabs for the win, but then in the 2-hour finale at Paul Ricard, it's 100 points up for grabs for victory, isn't it, if memory serves me correctly, or something like that?
Yeah, it is, to be honest. It's 100 points for the 2-hour race, so yes, it's all to play for. But yeah, I mean, not only does Hartnell have to beat Archie just to sort of postpone, shall we say, the title battle, but he's got to beat him by some good margins to gain the points on him, obviously. So currently, as it stands, Archie battles for the wins. He wants to win every week, and he drives for the win. But really, strategy-wise, for the champion, as the championship stands, he's sitting pretty really still.
So effectively, he has one hand on it.
Absolutely.
At the end of this race, if he has a good finish, I mean, even if he gets in the top 5, I know it's going to be disappointing, but you've got to look at his consistency run. He started with the second in the first round at the Nurburgring, then he took a third. He's had multiple wins. He didn't compete at Monza because he felt that it was not a track that he was going to perform at, or it was a track that he didn't want to perform at. So effectively, he's been very, very tactical in how he's approached this championship run. And okay, Crossman put a little bit of a spanner in the fly in the ointment, but Clifford Roberts still, you know, both he and Crossman could catch up to Hartnell. And look how close the gap is between the three of them right now for what's going to be P4. Clifford Roberts could really do with getting past quickly and putting a car between himself and Crossman.
Yeah, and as you say, this is the top three in the championship. So Archie is sitting pretty because James isn't going to bag enough points to really make a difference on that gap. And Crossman, who's actually 100 points behind Archie at the moment, is behind him in the race as well. So he's not going to close the gap at all. So yeah, one hand on the trophy. He'll just be biding his time, no rash moves, and he'll just do what he does round after round, and he'll just keep his head down and finish where he finishes. But the podium's not out of the question for Archie, not by a long way.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the gaps now, Kakos still leading, but by just under half a second ahead of Steve Haley. We're about to hit 1/3 completed in just under 2 minutes' time, so nearly 30 minutes done and dusted, just over 60 to go here at Barcelona. And at the moment, the top 14 drivers have yet to make their mandatory pit stop as we go on board the top of the rear diffuser of Lukasz Kakos's Lamborghini.
Yeah, and I was just looking down the order at Crossland. He's still making his move up the field. He's in 15th after just gaining that place. So he's still on the charge, and he's done one of his pit stops, and everybody else in front of him has yet to do one. So he's going to jump way up the order when that happens.
Oh, Steve Haley was looking up the inside of Lukasz Kakos there, as Clifford Roberts still trying to look at the opportunity. As you said, no rash manoeuvres from the number 96 Audi on the 168 for Hartnell in the Ferrari just up ahead. And Hartnell also using as much track as humanly possible.
Yep, all of it and a little bit more.
Yes, every which way, as they say. Left, right, asphalt, whatever you want, there you go. There's plenty of it here at Barcelona. But again, a great three-way exchange between this trio for 4th, 5th and 6th position as we go on board once again between the rear tailpipes of the Barwell Motorsport Lamborghini of Lukasz Kakos.
Oh, and that's Haley's gone to pit as Regan had caught him up as well, so he's avoiding that battle with Regan and Kakos and just gone into the pits now to try and do the undercut.
Well, there we go. The first of the top 14 that have actually decided to blink, and it is Steve Haley. 30 minutes down, 60 to go. 1 hour left here at Barcelona. And Mark Riddell actually asks you, Steve, on YouTube, why aren't you racing these races, Steve? I think I can answer that for you, Steve, because you like being behind the microphone a bit more now these days, eh?
I was going to say I'm a better talker than I am driver, mate. But, you know. I still race, but it's just all part of bringing the community forward, and I do enjoy the commentating side of things as well. So yeah, I get the best of both worlds. So thanks for asking though, Mark, and be nice to see you back in the community doing some racing with us.
Yes, let's hope you do, Mark. So, but also Steve actually did compete at the, what was it? Was it the penultimate round of Season 1 GT4 in the Porsche?
Yeah, Laguna Seca was a good race. Enjoyed that.
Yeah, and he gave Aaron Walker quite a bit of a run for his money.
Yeah, but you know, the conditions weren't right. I think on an optimal day, Aaron, I wouldn't have got near him, to be honest. He's pretty hot in the GT4s and the GT3s, to be fair to him.
So it's getting very interesting as now Isalovic pits, Wigan pits, as Dave Hedges now running in 19th, just behind the number 76 Lexus of Rich Smith, and now Pixley's pitted. So
this is a battle for position as well. It's worth pointing out these two guys have both pitted once, so this is track position. And yes, Mark on chat, the races are open to anyone, but if you're still in our Discord, you can actually go to the sign-ups, GT4 or GT3, and just pop your name in.
So just over 58 minutes remaining, and yeah, Crossland after... Now, look at Crossland.
Yes, I said he'd jump up the order, didn't I? A few laps ago, once they all started making the pit stops, he was, you know, the highest up in the order who had done one pit stop. So it's obviously stands to reason now he's climbing the order pretty quickly.
Well, if anyone might remember Charlie Croston's run in the KTM at Bathurst for round 3, season 2 of GT4 from 23rd to the final step of the rostrum. And that just shows why Team Fordzilla have got that guy on their books. He's now up into 10th place as Lindsay's pitted. Ruddock has now pitted in the second of the Lamborghinis. So there is Crossland. Very shortly he'll come past the pits at some point to get past Ruddock. So it's been rather interesting, these cat and mouse strategic games that we see here in endurance racing, wouldn't you say, Steve?
Yeah, and to be honest, when we're planning the championships, that's why we do it, because, you know, everyone can just do a sprint race, likes to flag, but it makes it a little bit more interesting when we make them visit the pits a couple of times. And just to mention, Regan Mitchell in second place, he's still lapping faster than Lucas in first place, but literally only by about a tenth. Lucas was a 44.9 on his last lap, and Regan was a 44.8. So he's not really making much headway, but he's close enough.
Yep, so with 56 minutes and 35 seconds still to go, Karkosh leads now on lap number 20 of this penultimate round of ACC Season 3 GT3 as we go back on board with Hartnell in the 168, Clifford Roberts and Crossman doing their best to get past the Ferrari. And you can just see how committed Clifford Roberts is. He wants that position. He wants that third place. And this is a battle for position, ladies and gentlemen. Let's not forget that. And so Hartnell, I think, you know, there's been some tracks where the Ferraris have been on song, like Monza, where he won that race. But then you've got the likes of Steve Haley now battling for position with Mark Neutlings, who's yet to make a mandatory pit stop. And there is Chris Pinchbeck, who's a lap down also.
Yeah, but we know from the past races, we don't expect Mark Neutlings to make a pit stop anytime soon. He does tend to run longer, and that's not what Steve Haley wants right now, because he'll want to get that position in the bag and get in some clear air to make his undercut work. Otherwise, he's going to potentially lose time on the other guys. So we see him diving for the inside there. That's absolute fantastic. Really made that point and good awareness from Mark there, just to stay out wide, as we saw the Bentley just get a little bit squirrely under the brakes there.
Yeah, I definitely saw that a little bit there too. So Jeffrey Wolf has now done his first mandatory pit stop and now is down in what is effectively 12th place, as now Haley up into P10. Roberto Santoro, who is we're now going to Charlie Crossland, who is absolutely flying. He's like a whirling dervish. He's just done a 45 flat. He's chasing down Ranjiv Kalsi, who's yet to make a pit stop in the number 47 Ferrari. And then you look at the rest of the top 6. So Hrobar, Crossman, Clifford Roberts, Hartnell, Mitchell and Karkosh yet to blink. But Crossland is on an absolute mission. I think he wants to get his first win in the bag in GT3, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I was going to say there's no wonder he's on an absolute charge, because if he's looking at that standings and seeing where he is, you know, when the other guys pit, we're potentially looking at our race leader here. So he's not going to want to be stuck behind anybody for any length of time. He's, again, like Haley, he's going to want clear air and take advantage of the track position and you know, really gun that car and try and get some gap between the other guys. And, you know, like you say, go for that first win.
Yeah, well, he took 1.8 seconds out of Ranjiv Kalsi on that last lap, and he's taken just over a second out of him. And he's going towards the outside. He's going to take the run inside, cuts through Elf, and he keeps two wheels on the tarmac. Ranjiv Kalsi not giving any quarter as they go through Renault. The pair side by side. Kalsi back up the inside in the Ferrari, but Crossland keeping it pinned towards the outside into Repsol. He's not giving up. It's Charlie Crossland. You've got to give him absolute plaudits for having a lot of guts there. Intestinal fortitude, definitely 2 words of the day to be associated with Team Fordzilla's Charlie Crossland. Absolutely brilliant side-by-side racing. Great respect between the pair of them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, you know, we're giving obviously Charlie Crossland a lot of praise there and saying there's a lot of respect, but Ranjiv Kalsi as well. You know, looking at the best lap times, Ranjiv's best lap is a 46 more or less dead. Crossland's is a 44 dead, so there's a 2-second deficit, but Ranjiv's managing to defend and hold that position.
Oh, Archie Clifford Roberts now in the pits. So he pitted from what would have been 4th place behind James Hartnell. So his strategy call now comes into play as Crossland's starting to... I think he's trying to get... he's seeming to be a little bit frustrated. He runs 2 wheels onto the sand, going through into Eurocar, and then now they come into the RACC chicane. Crossland doing everything. He's going left, right, and now he's going to go into the pits from 8th position.
Yeah, so that means Charlie's clearing his pits. This will be his last pit stop, as has Dave Hedges in 18th. He's now completed all his pit stops. So these 2 guys are going to be going to the flag now. So it's really going to leave us guessing for a little while to the real state of the positions in this race.
So Regan Mitchell in 2nd place is closing on Lukas Kakos. And we know that the Mercedes is very well associated with that fantastic engine roar from the exhaust on the back end, but also the amount of grunt that it has coming out of the corners. So Lukas Kakos now has another fight on his hands, but to be out there at the front of the field heading into turn 1, we're now about to complete our 22nd lap of this race with just over 51.5 minutes on the clock remaining, as now Regan Mitchell goes in the pits. This gives... Now, I'm wondering how much has Lukas Kakos, has he brimmed that tank on that Lamborghini? Because if he's done that, he's going to have an absolute field day if he manages to pull a gap. Because let's not forget, Hartnell and Crossman, could they be playing the long game too? The strategy call's completely out of the window here, Steve.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, all of these cars will run at least an hour with a full tank. So we've only been going just under 40 minutes at the moment, haven't we? So they're easily within their fuel window. It is just a case of strategy for getting rid of those pit stops and getting them out of the way. So, nothing surprises me at the minute that we're all sort of mixed up. We've still got quite a few guys yet to make their first pit stop, and we've got some guys have completed all their pit stops.
Yeah, very true. Regan Mitchell, yep, in the pits. So Crossman and Hartnell promoted to 3rd and 2nd, respectively. Robart in the number 32. He's been doing a stellar job in the Audi. He's up to 4th. Ranjiv Kalsi, I think, might still be in 6th by the time that Regan Mitchell comes out of the pits, depending on how much fuel Regan has put in the Mercedes. Roberto Santoro yet to pit in 7th. Steve Haley in 8th. He's done a pit stop. Mark Neutlings again has done the graveyard stint in the Bentley, and he's currently 9th, ahead of Dean Riley. Clifford Roberts has one more pit stop to take. He's currently 11th, ahead of Jeffrey Wolf. Then it's Jordan Ruddock, Rich Smith, Paul Lindsay, Charlie Crossland, Reese Wiggin, Dave Hedges, Martin Durgala, and then we've got Sebastian de Tolonera rounding out the top 20, as there is Martin Durgala in the same livery as what we see Adam Isalovic in the T2 Motorsports Ferrari colours. He's running the 488 number, and Isalovic a couple of positions behind in 21st, running the 111. As there's Dean Riley closing up on Mark Neutelings. So some really good battles up and down the field, as now Hartnell pits from P3.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Mark Riddell for the kind words. He's obviously just mentioned in the chat that he's just got into VR, and he'd like to get back into some racing, and he goes on to say Simsport's always provided the best online racing he's been involved with. So thank you for those kind words, mate. And like I said earlier, you're more than welcome to come back and test your mettle, so to speak, with these guys and see how you measure up.
So 49 minutes to go on the clock. Riley closing on Neutelings for 8th position. And about 7.2 seconds up ahead is Steve Haley in 7th, ahead of Roberto Santoro, Ranjiv Kalsi. Hartnell still in the pits at the minute. Probar, Crossman and Karkosh. And that takes you all the way to the lead of the race at the minute. So Lukasz Karkos on his 24th lap of the circuit here. 2.892 miles, 4.655 kilometres. And the fastest lap held around the circuit is by one Valtteri Bottas from Mercedes-AMG Petronas. Yeah,
we just saw Dean Riley then just showing his nose and maybe trying to get the inside line, but that Bentley is one heck of a car, shall we say, to try and overtake down the straight. It's pretty quick, and in the hands of Mark Neutlings, it's pretty good in the braking zone as well.
So, Hedges and Crossland, two Audis that have completed their mandatory pit stops. Now this is going to get interesting, wouldn't you say, Steve?
It is, because obviously, as we were looking earlier, Crossland was looking like potentially he would have his track position, he would be first, and Hedges, by my reckoning there, is only about 10 seconds behind him, so that's going to promote Dave fairly well up the order as well. Really interested to see how all this pans out when the guys have taken the pit stops.
So just having a look at the timing screens on who has got one pit stop still remaining. Steve Haley in 6th, as Charlie Crossland trying to get past Paul Lindsay. And Lindsay has been in the wars a little bit earlier on in the race, but Charlie Crossland, that is coming out of Renault, now down into Repsol. Crossland looks to go up the inside. Not enough room for him to get through on Lindsay, but Lindsay still has one more pit stop to make, as does Rich Smith, as does Jordan Ruddock. Jeffrey Wolfe, Archie Clifford Roberts, James Hartnell, Regan Mitchell, Dean Riley and Steve Haley are all still with one more mandatory pit stop to take. So
yeah, Dean Riley's going into the pits now, so he's dropping down the order a little bit, but he's getting his pit stop out of the way.
Yep, so that means that Ferrari will hopefully be fueled to the brim and run to the end of the race. We have seen it before where drivers have not been able to get to the end of the race, and they've had to do a quick splash and dash, haven't they?
Absolutely, yeah. And just to mention, Archie's put in the fastest lap of the race now with a 43.5, so he's charging, albeit still behind Hartnell, and the race leader is now pitting.
Oh, so Kakosh now blinks. It's all tap from behind on Paul Lindsay by Charlie Crossland going through into the RACC chicane. So yeah, I don't know how to call that one really, to be honest with you, but we'll leave that one to the stewards. Chris Crossman's now pitted, so the top, that's first and third, so that means Peter Hrobar now is effectively the de facto leader with just over half of the race remaining. And there is the number 32 Team Land Audi Sport Team Audi Sport car there. Lovely looking livery. I think a little bit brighter than the ones that the editors run, because they run under the Team WRT liveries, if memory serves me correctly.
They do indeed. Yeah, and you say Hrobar in the lead. Kakov still showing second, but I'm wondering if Kelsey will come round to get in front and take that second place. Because again, it'll be interesting when Kakos and Crossman come out to see where they come out in traffic, because that's going to have a lot to play. It'll interfere a lot tonight.
I think also the fact now that Steve Haley... Oh, stop go 30 for Chris Crossman. Now that was for speeding in the pit lanes, if memory serves me correctly.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh dear, Chris Crossman's night has gone from bad to worse, unfortunately, there. But now Steve Haley has a real good opportunity to get himself a bit further up the order. And let's not forget that both now Kelsey, has he served a pit stop yet? I don't think he has.
No, and Steve Haley's got the jump on Kakos there, by 6.5 seconds just over. So the undercut really worked for Steve.
Great strategic call from the number 24 from Team Hitotsuyama.
But indeed, that does mean obviously Crossland had track position on Haley. Crossland's cleared his pits, so issues and incidents to one side. We could see Crossland in the lead when all the pit stops are done.
Yeah, I think you're right there, because now Peter Hrobar has now pitted on lap number 25 of this race. So we've got under half of the race remaining. Steve Haley trying to get past Ranjiv Kelsey, but Kelsey yet to pit. So whether he does go through whether he does come into the pits on the next lap, and that will give Steve Haley plenty of clean air and allow him to put the hammer down. Now, Steve Haley, on that particular occasion, he did a 1:45.219. Ranjiv Kelsey 1:45.894. So Kelsey is still pretty quick in the latter stage. Now he's gone into the pits. This now allows Steve Haley. Now, will he get out in front of Peter Hrobar is my biggest question here. So Haley goes through into second place, comes across the line, down towards the first corner. Will he be ahead of him? I'm not too sure on that particular occasion, but Haley's got some clean air. Now he can use this.
Yeah, he's in the lead on the track. He has gained that position. The timing tower has just taken a little bit of time to update, but the timing screen is showing Steve Haley in the lead now. So, head down time, crack those ups out.
Yeah. And then Robar has also been caught speeding in the pit lane, so he now gets a stop-go 30. So 2 drivers there having been pinged for speed limit infringements after their pit stops. Not really good for the pair of them, really, there, Steve, is it?
No, that's it. I mean, it's quite often they can be caught as they're entering the pits if you don't get the speed scrubbed off before you get to the speed limit boards. Then that's where quite often the penalties are picked up. It's usually on the entry to the pits. As we saw, Steve Haley was pushing really hard there as he got his Audi a little bit squirrely going into that corner.
Right, Dave Hedge is about to cross the line. Ranjiv Kalsi and Mark Neuseling's in the pits.
Pinchbeck with a stop-go 30 as well.
Oh, what was it? Third time's the charm.
Absolutely. I mean, poor Chris tonight. Obviously, he's had a humdinger of a race, and I don't think it's all been his fault. But that one we can only blame Chris for that.
Yeah, yellow flag out on circuit at the moment, and there is Chris Pinchbeck, and he's now pulled in into the pits. Now, I think, is that going to be a retirement for the number 43? That'll be a real shame for Chris there.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like he's decided to call it a day. Obviously, he was well down the field due to incidents earlier on, and then getting that stop go, he's, final nail in the coffin, so to speak.
Yeah, there's now Peter Robart closing on the number 86 of Jeffrey Wolf, and now Robart coming in to serve his stop go 30, and he pinballs off the pit lane barriers on the right hand side. Oh, yeah. Dearie me.
Absolutely making sure he got the speed scrubbed off and using the walls to help slow him down, I think, there. But
that's the first ever time I've seen that happen here at Simsport Racing. Peter Robart pinball whizzed off the pit lane entry barrier. Just when you think you hadn't seen it all, Steve, and something like that comes and blows it out of the water, eh?
Yeah, I mean, Jeffrey Wolf in 7th, I always keep a lookout for Wolf in these races because, as I say, every single race, he does come to his own as the race comes on. He's sat in 7th position, albeit 10 seconds behind Hartnell at the moment. So I'll be really interested to see where Jeffrey pans out in this race because, he does come into his own as the race goes on, and he does have stronger second-half performances, I always think.
Yes, the blue flag's being shown to those just up front, which was Roberto Santoro, I think that was Lukas Kakos, trying to get past. Chris Crossman yet to serve his stop-go 30, if memory serves me correctly, so I think he's got another lap or two before he needs to serve that, doesn't he?
Yes, I think it's 3 laps he's got to serve it in, otherwise it becomes a disqualification, unfortunately. But Herbar's served his, and it looks like he's joining somewhere in round about 13. No, he's down in 18th place on the timing screen. I think the tower on the screen is just taking a little bit of updating.
Yep, so Crossman now in the pits to serve his stop-go 30, and that means that Regan Mitchell and Archie Clifford Roberts go up into 3rd and 4th respectively. James Hartnell will take 5th as we go into just under 40 minutes remaining.
Yeah, interesting to see that Archie's closed that gap down to Mitchell, because if we remember back to when Archie was battling with Hartnell, they were a good few handful of seconds off Mitchell, and he was battling for the lead, obviously, against Kakos. So the pit stops have benefited Archie there.
Well, looks like Rich Smith is going to serve his second and final mandatory pit stop in the number 76 Lexus. My apologies there, frog in the throat.
I thought you were getting all excited for a second there, Alex, and I thought I'd missed something.
Well, if something was really kicking off, you'd know about it, Stephen. You probably... if anyone might remember the Simply Race British Championships that both myself and Steve commentated on, there were 3.5 minutes when I went full David Addison, and he couldn't get a word in edgeways, and he just went, after the race, he went, that sounded absolutely glorious when you went full bore.
Absolutely. I think, the art of co-commentating is knowing when not to speak. And that was one of those occasions as we see Mitchell and Archie getting really close and personal. Now Archie's going to start applying that pressure to Regan. But again, we've said it many times about many drivers. Regan will not be easy to pass. He's a very talented young man, and he knows how to defend as well as attack. Yeah,
I think the defensive will be definitely called thou shalt not pass. As now Jordan Ruddock goes up the inside of Jeffrey Wolf. That is for P6. These two still have one mandatory pit stop left to mandate as Chris Crossman. Is that another stop-go 30 again? Tell me that's not so. I've just seen a stop go 30 again alongside Chris Crossman's. Yeah.
No, it's cleared.
Oh, it's clear. Thank goodness for that. Oh, I think I was waiting for someone to bring the defibrillator into the room and go, clear! And that was the heart in the mouth moment for me, and I think probably for Chris, and he probably thought, no, I haven't got enough stop go 30. What's going on here?
I'm just looking, though, to be fair, Alex, and he's disappeared off the leaderboard, so I'm wondering if he's called it a night.
Oh.
Which is really unfortunate for points.
If that's the second stop go 30, oh my goodness me, that has changed everything. You know what that means? James Hartnell now has a really, really big advantage going into the final round at Paul Ricard for second in the championship.
Not only that, Regan Mitchell, who's currently in third place, is only 18 points behind. Regan Mitchell is 54 points behind Crossman.
Oh.
So he could make up all of those points this evening.
Well, that depends on whether Archie Clifford Roberts gets past him first. Yeah, very, very interesting developments here in the penultimate round of the season. And, you know...
Yeah, I mean, one way or another, Regan, depending where he finishes, obviously, but it could make it very interesting for that final race.
Oh, no, I've just heard Chris Crossman has just said he forgot to turn the auto pit limiter off. The stupid pit limit's got me twice.
Oh, man.
Sorry to hear about that, Chris, buddy. He's posting in the chat at the moment. That's a real shame for Chris. I feel sorry for him as well. Just when you want it to be a really, really good battle all the way through the season, and then something like that comes up.
Archie's diving up the inside of Regan there, but I don't think he's going to hold that line long enough. He's not. Regan's managed to defend and cut back to the inside line again. So good, strong attack from Archie, but very good, strong defence from Regan there just to hold that position.
Yep, as we're fast approaching just over 35 minutes of the race to go here, and it is still very much a case of who is going to be the one that takes the victory. Now, you said about Charlie Crossland. Okay, look at Dave Hedges. He's only 2 places behind, and everyone else in the top 10 still has to serve a further mandatory pit stop. This is really getting interesting now, Steve, because I think I've got a feeling that it might be that Crossland and Hedges that could really be the ones that are battling for the lead and battling for the win at the end of this race.
Yeah, I think Haley will have something to say about that, but yeah, I don't know. It's difficult. As we see, Herbar's got a drive-through. That'll be for track limits. Obviously, he'll have done his 4th cut and gained a penalty of a drive-through, so that's really unfortunate for Peter, who was having a pretty good race, to be fair.
Yeah, Aaron, our good friend Aaron Walker, he says, has Regan attended every round? I think he has, hasn't he?
Yes, I believe he has, and there's an attendance bonus for attending every round, so that'll be some extra points in the pot for Regan. Okay,
so we're coming to a replay here. Now, this is that's Dean Riley, and that's the 488 of Martin Zugala, I believe. So, yeah, that was very interesting. So now Regan Mitchell being pressurised by Archie Clifford Roberts going down into turn 1. Clifford Roberts towards the outside. Mitchell keeps the inside line going through Elf. And that was a nicely done move there by Regan Mitchell to shut the door for Archie Clifford Roberts. But look how quickly Audi is coming through into Renault through turn 3. That's really, really quick counter-attack there from Archie Clifford Roberts. But Mitchell's still ahead at the minute.
Yeah, he's not really showing him any weaknesses, is he? He's defending strong as Archie's got the tighter line there and got up the inside, but he's going to be on the outside for the next turn. So it's awesome battling, strong attacks and strong defences. Regan's really, he's making a battle of this and making Archie work. Yeah, making a meal out of it as well, as Steve Haley is now in the pits. And that's very interesting indeed, because look at it. Imagine this, that now Charlie Crossland is going to try and get past the number 7 of Richard Pixley. Pixley just lets the number 66 Audi go past into turn number 1. And it could be, I mean, I'm not going to count my chickens before they hatch, but what if it was a 3-way scrap between 3 Audi R8s, between Haley, Crossland and Hedges towards the end? But then you've got to factor in the other drivers up ahead, because Crossland is 30.9 seconds behind Jeffrey Wolf. So if Crossland,
Hedges and Haley can put in some serious qualifying style laps in the next few laps before the rest of them pit, they could really have an opportunity to be right up at the sharp end of the field.
Yeah, and let's not, don't forget about Hartnell, because although he's 2.5 seconds or just under 2.5 seconds behind these guys, he's lapping, let me have a look, he's lapping nearly half a second faster than these two guys in front because they're battling, so he's closing that gap.
Yeah, he did a 1:45.228. Clifford Roberts last time did a 1:45.573. Regan Mitchell a 1:45.555. So he is lapping pretty much over 0.3 of a second quicker than the two in front. So they're by no means out of the woodwork quite yet. But Kakosh still has a 6.18 second lead ahead of Regan Mitchell, who again is making that Mercedes rear end as wide as humanly possible, not allowing Clifford Roberts to actually get an opportunity to get past. So great attacking work by Archie, and then also great defensive work by Regan there.
Yeah, very, very good. And it's really sort of, they're not helping each other in the battle, as someone's pointed out in chat, that holding each other up like this. Not only is Hartnell catching them, but obviously we don't know where that throws Crossland. And, I do think Crossland's going to end up in front of them once they've done their pit stops, but it's by how much. It is helped, like the person says in chat, it really is helping Crossland's cause this evening.
Yeah, so could be very interesting as we fast approach the conclusion of 1 hour of racing. 1 minute and 10 seconds until that transpires with Kakosh, Mitchell, Clifford Roberts. Those two on the latter two on your screens is now Mitchell trying to break the toe from Clifford Roberts as they go down towards the first corner. Hartnell, Ruddock and Wolf and Lindsay out of that's 7 drivers out of the top 10 that have yet to make their second and final mandatory pit stop. Who is going to blink first? I mean, Regan Mitchell at the minute did a 1:45.231. Kakosh, in the meantime, has been putting in the 44.7s. The Lamborghini is pulling away at the minute. He's got a gap of around, 6.5 seconds at the minute now, with just over 30 minutes to go. Kakosh now is the one that's trying to move, who's trying to move away in order to allow himself enough of an opportunity to maybe get an undercut on these two, because they keep on pushing each other like they are. They're both running in the 1:45.2s here, Steve. That is about half a second down on what Kakosh is doing. Crossland's lap times of 1:44.7 again from the 66 driver.
Yeah, he's matching. That's the same as Kakos. He's a 1:44.7 as well. So those two are lapping at the same sort of pace at the moment. Haley was a 44.697, so again a 44.7 for round figures. So those three guys are lapping on the same, but Haley's round about 12 or 13 seconds behind Crossland on track, I believe. So he's sort of not out of it, but he's got a big gap to Crossland to make up if he wants to get on the top step of the podium. So I do think Crossland's 28 seconds behind Wolf in 6th. So when you add those times together, I think it's going to be close when they come out of the pits, to be honest, but I think Crossland might have it.
Yep, I think you very much might be right, and don't count out Dave Hedges on that one either. And he's about 12 seconds behind Crossland at the minute. There's now, we go to Hedges, who's just got, I'm wondering who's that behind him. That looks to be, is that Steve Haley, I believe, that's just behind him, and the Park Place Porsche of Paul Lindsay, who's managed to get his way all the way up to 9th place, but also still has a mandatory pit stop still to go before the end of the race.
Yeah, and it's looking like Archie's, he's got the 1:43.5, which is the fastest lap of the race so far, and they get a point for fastest lap as well, so that's an extra point in the bag for Archie this evening, as we see him still really hounding the Mercedes of Regan Mitchell to try and get that position off him. Chris Grossman in the chat, just sorry for the DNF boys, got 2 stop and go penalties because, as you said earlier, so it's ruined his championship, but he's had to cool down, as you can understand. Obviously, we said he's probably going to be very upset with that, but sorry to hear that, Chris, mate.
Yeah, he also feels so bad for clipping Archie near the start as well. I mean, Chris, that's racing. We both know that, buddy. But thank you for again for putting your heart and soul into it, mate. We know you've all got, you've got the best of intentions. As now Steve Haley trying to get
Yeah.
up close and personal with Dave Hedges. Oh.
Yeah, I was gonna talk all over you then when I saw Haley trying to make a move on Hedges there. That was very close, and these two obviously like for like machinery now. So this is a battle of the drivers.
Yeah, especially when you think about the team's championship at the moment. The editors are leading it by quite a considerable margin. But obviously, the editors looking to, the Hitatsuyama are looking to also make some inroads in the meantime, as there's a drive-through for Paul Lindsay. That would be for track limits, if I'm very much mistaken there, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it'll be track limits on that one. There's no live stewarding on these races, and that's the standard penalty for exceeding the track limits 4 times.
So effectively, Paul Lindsay gets a little slap on the wrist, so he will have to come through and serve an automatic drive-through. But it's still been really, really good at the minute. I think our broadcast director actually told me that there was a slight bit of contact between Archie Clifford Roberts and Regan Mitchell, that Clifford Roberts slightly touched the back bumper of Mitchell, who has kept second position.
Yeah, and we see another stop go there for the 669 car, Ferrari, so obviously speeding in the pit lanes. So another gentleman's evening going from bad to worse, unfortunately. But, it's those pit limiters, you just need to be very, very careful.
Yep, so there is Archie Clifford Roberts, who is ahead of James Hartnell by over 1.1 seconds.
It wouldn't be unusual for these guys as well that have got one pit stop to actually make it with 5 minutes of the race to go. So we may not really see how this race is panning out until the dying couple of laps, to be honest. It's quite often that a few of these guys will just they'll do a splash and dash, which literally 1 or 2 litres of fuel. So they'll have literally 2 or 3 seconds stationary time, as we see. Roberts is going into the pits to clear his final pit stop.
So that will give him a bit of clean air, and we go on board now with Ranjiv Kalsi in the number 47 Ferrari, closing down on Dean Riley in the number 2 Tempesta entry, and they're about 0.8 of a second adrift. So yeah, a bit of a good strategy call there, I think, for Archie Clifford Roberts. It means that he can get the pit stop out of the way completely, put as much fuel in the car that is absolutely required, as now Steve Haley trying to go up the inside of Dave Hedges. Gap was quickly closing there, but then Hedges runs wide. Haley up the inside. All this is going to be close between the pair as Hedges mounts the curbs on the inside of the corner. But Steve Haley, that was absolutely opportunistic at its finest.
Yeah, started the move on the inside and finished it off by going around the outside of Dave there. And, great respect from both drivers, but fantastic driving from Steve. Opportunistic, as you say, put the pressure on into that heavy braking zone. I didn't see it, but I believe that forced Dave to go a little bit deep into the corner and open the door up for Steve just to take advantage. And advantage is what he took and gain that position. So and that was indeed a battle for position.
And that was a very cleanly fought battle as well. Just that, like, the amounts of racing room, and these two guys have raced each other long enough to know when there is enough racing room, when there isn't enough racing room, and go for the opportunities when they present themselves, but in the right way possible. Nice comment by Bliv AK on the YouTube stream there. Unlike the MotoGP rider that landed on their feet earlier on this weekend, I must say, and that was definitely that kind of code there, Bliv, if you've ever seen that. Oh, Regan Mitchell now jumps in the pit, so he's going to get his pit stop out of the way. So it seems like they're going to start sort of filtering down, and I think it's going to be one of the biggest factors that we do need to consider here. How long is Lukasz Kakos going to go for? Because he's got a 9-second advantage over James Hartnell. Mitchell's in the pits. Ruddock is in the pits. Wolf's still got to make a pit stop. And Kakos, he could really have played the long game and done it in completely the right way.
He's playing the long game, and he's rightly so. He's pretty much got clear air at the moment because he's in first place. Anyone he comes up behind, they're going to get the blue flags. So potentially they've got to get out of his way as quick as possible. And he's got the clean track, so he can put the lap times in. And his last lap was a 45.1, which is quicker than the guys that are chasing him. So yeah, he may be playing the right tactic. It is going to be very close, but let's wait and see. This is going to be interesting. I don't think Lucas will pit. I might be wrong, but I don't think he'll pit till the last 5 minutes of the race.
Yeah, I'm going to side with you on that one, to be honest with you. I think he's going to... Oh, Ruddock's got to stop go 30, and that would be for speeding in the pit lane. So Jordan Ruddock, having had such a great run in the Lamborghini, now drops behind Charlie Crossland. And then you also look at the fact that Regan Mitchell and Clifford Roberts and Crossland, they are covered by, what is that, just over 23 seconds?
Yeah.
It's not much.
No, and Ruddock there really unlucky because he cleared his pit stops and he was up in a solid sort of, solid position there for a good finish. I just noticed in the chat that Chris Crossman was mentioning that someone's knocked the speed limit board down as you enter the pit. So that could really be causing these penalties if the board's missing. There is a line on the ground as well usually, I believe, but if that board's missing, obviously that's a massive detriment to the lads going in the pits, and that could explain why we're getting all these stop goes.
Yeah, Chris could very well be right. It's one of those things. I mean, hopefully it wasn't Peter Roba when he absolutely pinballed off the side of the barrier. I think, yeah, he definitely made sure, right, I'm not going to make that same mistake another time. And then literally damage the Audi for the sake of a pit stop infringement.
Yeah, I'm just watching Hartnell because he's done his final pit stop and seeing where he feeds back into the proceedings this evening, because he's dropping down the order a little bit now, but he's obviously on the way out of the pits. He's showing in third place, so it'd be interesting to see if that's a real-time third place.
So we're coming up to the last 21 minutes, and that is hitting exactly now. So Karkosh still leads on lap number 39 of the penultimate race of Simsport Racing Assetto Corsa Competizione Season 3 GT3 here at Barcelona, ahead of Jeffrey Wolf, who also has yet to make a second mandatory pit stop. James Hartnell rounds out the top three at the moment, ahead of Regan Mitchell, Archie Clifford Roberts, Charlie Crossland, Stephen Haley, Dave Hedges, Jordan Ruddock, soon to serve a stop go 30. Dean Riley and Ranjiv Kalsi, I think as a result of that, at the very least, will be promoted to 9th and 10th positions respectively. Then you've got Rich Smith, Adam Isalovic having a very steady run. He's been he's been hiding behind the curtains if it was a Panto production. He's running at the top 13 positions ahead of Roberto Santoro, and Mark Neuteling's in the sole remaining Bentley rounds out the top 15.
Yeah, I think James Hartnell, we're looking at now potentially a race winner or second place as it stands, depending where Kakos comes out of the pits. With these two guys, obviously Regan Mitchell's chasing James down now, and Archie's 4 seconds further back on Regan, and Crossland's 4 seconds further back on Archie. So that is the real-time positions there. The guys are battling for track position, and they're battling for the steps on the podium.
And I think I've just seen Bliv AK just come back in as well. So, yeah, I think he's just getting some seat time with regards to the... Yep, there he is. Bliv AK back out on the circuit, just letting everyone get past. I think he's just... I think, that's not a bad idea sometimes. Okay, you might be at the back part of the field, but as long as he can get a bit more understanding with the car, it'll help him a little bit with regards to Paul Ricard in a couple of weeks for the season finale.
Yeah, he's getting some track time in. Obviously, he'll do his best to stay out of the way of everybody now, as we see Wolf's got a stop go as well. And then Bismarck in the chat said someone took out the pit lane board, so I had no vision from my car where the pit starts, so he slammed into the pits at 100 kilometres an hour. So obviously, yeah, bit too quick there. And yeah, same for Chris Crossman. But yeah, it's proving to be a game changer of those pit boards.
Yep. So that's changed the complexity, I think, a bit more than a lot of people were anticipating. I think ourselves up here in the virtual commentary box included. But it's fast becoming, I think it's been pretty much so far, with just over 18 minutes of the race to go, the Lukas Kakos show, hasn't it, really? And he's still got to make a pit stop. But I'm wondering, what is the gap between him and James Hartnell at the minute here, Steve? Because that's the biggest conundrum I really need answering.
Yeah, it's showing a lap down, isn't he, at the minute? But, like you said, it'll be interesting to see exactly where he is on track in comparison, just so we can try and work that out, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. It'd be good to have that sort of idea in our heads. But I think...
Mitchell's working hard. Mitchell's working very hard to try and catch Hartnell. They're pretty much both lapping 1:45.1, both of them the last lap, so the gap is remaining stagnant. Charlie Crossland did a 45.3 on his last lap, so he got a little bit held up. The man on the move is Archie with a 1:44.6, so he was the fastest out of the front guys on that last lap.
And there's 3.5 seconds between him and Regan. So, yeah, I mean, he's taken about half a second out of Regan on that last lap alone as we go into the last 17 minutes.
Yeah, and as we say that, Steve Haley did a 1:44.6 as well on his last lap, so he was, sort of 7/10 faster than Crossland in front of him, and he's 9.3 seconds behind Crossland at the moment. So that's a big gap to close in 16 minutes, but at that pace, he could close it.
Yeah, I think you're very much correct there, Steve. We've seen dynamite drives from Steve Haley so far, not just in GT3 but also GT4 over the past few weeks and months here at Simsport Racing. So 16.5 minutes to go, and yeah, I think what you said earlier, Steve, about the fact that Lukas could very well serve his last pit stop with just literally moments to spare. And that could make all the difference, whether he is going to win the race or whether it's going to come down to the likes of Hartnell, Mitchell and Clifford Roberts. And Clifford Roberts is about 3 seconds off as now Jeffrey Wolf comes out of the pits having served a stop go 30. There's Rich Smith, who rounds out the top 10. And he's trying to battle away with Ranjiv Kelsey in the number 47 Ferrari for 9th place. This is a great little battle. We've had battles up and down the order all the way through this 90-minute encounter. And it's been rather enthralling so far.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. Obviously, Rich Smith battling for Ranjiv, but Ranjiv's got one more pit stop to do. So while it is a battle for track position, Rich has got that position, no problem at all. So he'll be up into 9th once Ranj enters the pits.
And at the moment, I'm just looking at the lap times between Lukas Kakos and James Hartnell at the moment, Steve. Kakos did a 1:44.8 and Hartnell did a 1:45.1. So they're running so Hartnell is running about 0.3 of a second off of the, what I must say is quite militant, consistent pace that Lukas Kakos has done with regards to the long game strategy. There's now Rich Smith trying as hard as he can in the sole Lexus in the field to try and get past Ranjiv Kelsey, but no dice as of yet.
No, trying really hard there with Alexis, just trying to use some of the grunt down the straight, but the Ferrari just held him off as he goes to the outside now, and then try and cut back, but it's that's going to be a big move to pull off there. Ranjiv's got the line, he's defending well.
Yes, he is indeed. So Rich Smith still trying his best to get past. Oh, nearly a little bit of a tussle between the pair of them.
Almost trying too hard there, Alex.
Yeah, I think sometimes that can put the cat amongst the proverbial Lexus pigeon that we've got on our screen at the minute. And at least I said the word pigeon, not pigeons, because there's only one Lexus on the grid anyway. But yeah, now this straightaway, and that is looking very close. Rich Smith looked like he was going to try and plant it around the outside, but outbraked himself, and I think he just compromised his run through the corner there as a result.
Yeah, and while we're watching this battle, I'm also watching the timing screen, and Steve Haley and Archie are still the only two guys in the top half that are in the 44s, and Steve Haley took another 0.6 out of Crossland in that last lap. So the gap is coming down to Crossland. It's down to just a shade under 8 seconds now. So he's putting the charge on. Yeah.
Lukas currently on his 44th lap now. Oh, look, because I've just seen him in eye shot. Look, he's closing on these two in front. So Smith and Kelsey better watch out for the blue flags very, very quickly, because as soon as they get the blue flags, they'll have to move aside, because it looks like the gap between Lukas Karkosz and James Hartnell is quite considerable. I can't sort of like see exactly what the gap is, but it says +1 lap down to Hartnell. But I don't know what the true sort of like realistic aspects of where they both are on the circuit. Is now Rich Smith trying to go up the inside, this time on Ranjiv Kelsey. And next time for the next corner, Smith going around the outside. The pair have a little bit of a tussle, but Kelsey compromises himself. Smith runs wide, but then powers through the corner and manages to get past. And then Karkosz around the outside on the very next left-right chicane. And that allows him to get past Ranjiv Kelsey. Now he's got to quickly depose of Rich Smith just to get past and try and pull away. He's got to pull a big gap if he wants to keep ahead of James Hartnell.
I think, to be fair, he's got a pretty big gap at this point. I'm looking at the timing screens trying to work it out, but I think he might have a big enough gap. He might just have done this as Ranjiv closes right back up onto Rich Smith. So, I thought Rich might have just gained a bit of an advantage with that lapping situation there from Lucas, but he hasn't. And the director just mentioning to us we've got a 50-second gap from Karkosz to Hartnell. So that's just about enough, I would say, for a splash and dash and back out in the lead.
So I think your observation of it being 5 minutes to go for Lukas Karkosz to do the splash and dash, I think is pretty much game on that one. So, 11 minutes and 41 seconds still remaining to go on the clock. Hartnell still in second behind Karkosz, who's now on lap number 45 of the race. Regan Mitchell a further 1.1 seconds behind Hartnell. Then Clifford Roberts again closing up on the number 69 Mercedes. He's only just under 1.9 seconds adrift. Then it's a further 6.5 seconds back to Chris Crossland. And one of the biggest things I've noticed here, Steve, is that Stephen Haley has now closed the gap on the Team Ford Zilla driver to just over 6.9 seconds with just over 11 minutes on the clock to go.
Yeah, took another 7/10 out of him on the last lap. Like you say, he's closing that gap at quite a rate at the moment. So Charlie Crossland's maybe just taking a bit more out of his tyres than maybe Haley. We obviously don't know which pit stop Crossland took tyres, if indeed he did. So we don't know who's got the most laps on the tyres and the most tyre wear. So it looks like the car's coming to Steve Haley though, because he did a 1:44.3. Last lap, and Crossland's just done a 1:44.9, so Haley's still putting the faster laps in.
Yeah, by just over half a second. Pretty good performance there once again from Steve Haley. Roberto Santoro has now been hit with a stop-go penalty. He's just pitted as well. Seems like these pit stop boards not being there have definitely caught a lot of people out, including, as we were saying with regards to Chris earlier on, Peter Robar also got a stop-go 30. Jordan Ruddock got a stop-go 30. Plenty of them being caught, and the latest one is Roberto Santoro. So out of the top 18 drivers, Ranjiv Kelsey in 10th and Lukas Karkosz with just under 10 minutes to go are the only two drivers yet to serve their second and final mandatory pit stop. They have definitely both gone for the long game.
Yeah, we've just seen Crossland now trying to lap these two, and he's just getting held up a little bit, which won't help him out at all. Obviously, that'll allow Haley to close up a little bit more, but he's finally got past them both and back into clear air. But interestingly, up at the front, we've got James Hartnell, Regan Mitchell half a second back, and Archie 1.8 seconds further back. So that's going to turn into a three-way battle soon, because Archie's still doing 1:44.7s as opposed to Mitchell's 44.9 and Hartnell's 45 dead on the last lap. So he's lapping within sort of 3-4 tenths faster than the two guys in front of him.
Yeah, so still all to play for. Just under 9 minutes of the race remaining. Regan Mitchell just over a second behind James Hartnell in the 1:68. Effectively, it looks like, from my estimation here, Steve, that the title in some respects will go down to the wire for the driver's title. But I think realistically, with the way that both Archie Clifford Roberts and Dave Hedges have performed this evening, I think the editors with the amount of points that they had coming into this race, might have the title for the team's championship, I think, pretty much sewn up here at Barcelona.
Yeah, they're looking like it, because obviously Dean Riley's behind Dave Hedges, although James Hartnell is in front of Archie. So it's pretty much going to be there. I think it would take 2 DNFs at the final round, as we see Lucas Kakos taking his pit stop now. So this is going to shake it up, and this is how we're going to see where the other guys fall into place.
Did you see how slowly he came down that pit lane?
He was careful.
He was Mr. Careful personified there. And now, here we go. Hartnell on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, being chased down by Mitchell and Clifford Roberts, as Kakos now buries the accelerator to the floor. Out of the pit lane comes the number 13 Lamborghini, still in the lead with 7.5 minutes on the clock remaining. We're now on to lap number 47. I think we're going to hit over 50 laps completed here at the Circuit de Catalunya Barcelona in the Montmeló region here in Spain, as the sun now glaring a bit further towards the tarmac, as the local server time showing 6:02 p.m. But what a race it has been so far. Kakos has absolutely nailed it. Pole position in qualifying, and he's on course to what could be a fantastic and emphatic maiden victory here in Season 3, Steve.
Yeah, and I mean, after 90 minutes, he's literally one corner in front of the guys, and we've had battling for the full 90 minutes. It's been a fantastic display from all involved. Yeah, we've had a few stop-go penalties because the speed limit board, but these guys up at the front, as we saw Lucas there, was very, very careful. I think Chris Crossman, had he not got caught out by those boards, he would have been up here still battling for a podium place. So yeah, I think we've had some good racing tonight, and it's just a good show. So
we have just over 6 minutes remaining. We head to the season finale for Season 3 GT3 at Paul Ricard Le Castellet in France in just 2 weeks' time on October the 25th. After 10 weeks of 10 race, sorry, can't get the words out right. False teeth, Alex. 10 race evenings on Sundays over 20 weeks. And we are getting down to the business end of the season. Lucas Kakos has over a 7.5 second advantage ahead of James Hartnell. We're on board with Regan Mitchell in the number 69 Ferrari, who's just 6.5 tenths of a second adrift. Just half a second behind is the number 96 of Archie Clifford Roberts, who is looking to make good his intentions and looks to have one hand on that championship trophy for Season 3.
It looks like we're going to come down to last 5 minutes of hard battling now for those final 2 spots on the podium. These guys are going to go hammer and tong now, as Archie's close right up onto the back of Regan, who in turn is right on the back of the Ferraris. We see that Ferrari running really wide in that turn there, James, using all of the track to try and get the drive out the corner and get the jump on Regan if he can.
Yep, so into the last 5 minutes, Clifford Roberts looking, he sniffs, he can taste the podium. Can Archie, if I'm completely honest here, Steve, when he's just over just over 4 tenths behind Regan Mitchell, and now the gap just under 4 tenths. Look how close Archie Clifford Roberts is on the back bumper of Regan Mitchell. It is still not over and done with by a long sight, as Archie Clifford Roberts makes his intentions well and truly known to the number 69 Mercedes just up ahead, and that, if that keeps on battling the way they are, it just depends on how strategically placed James Hartnell can put that Ferrari to try and scarper away into the distance. He's got a little bit of a breathing space here, and it's got up to 8 tenths as Clifford Roberts in the tow of Regan Mitchell coming down the main straightaway. I don't think he's going to have enough of a tow to get there, or will he? No, he decides to back out of it. Discretion is the better part of valour for the number 96 of Archie Clifford Roberts as they go through Elf and now into the next corner at Renault. Wow, this is absolutely nail-biting right now, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely, and the fact that Archie's on the back of Regan has just given James a little bit of breathing space, although that's strange to say when we're talking about 7/10 of a second, but that is enough breathing space just for James to concentrate on what's in front of him and not worry too much about what's behind him. He'll leave that to Regan. He'll be one eye on Archie and one eye on where he's going at the moment.
Well, I think you might have to do some points calculations at the moment, Steve, because I'll be interested to see what it might be in terms of who's got what points come at the end of this round. But look at how hard Archie Clifford Roberts is battling away with Regan Mitchell. The amount of curb that he took on that last corner, that car was nearly up on two wheels, but he is not giving up yet. As long as there is time still left on the clock, you are guaranteed that Archie Clifford Roberts will breathe as much as he can to try and get past Regan Mitchell, because the gap between them is just 3.5 tenths of a second. And now James Hartnell is scarpering away in some sort of capacity. He's got a gap of 1.1 seconds. Oh, bit of the tail end started to snap away for Archie Clifford Roberts. It might mean that the tyres are starting to be at that point of degradation where it's not going to be easy. And if he puts the power down the wrong way coming out of the corner, Mitchell goes to the right, then to the left. Clifford Roberts keeps in the tow. Just over 2 minutes remaining. Down to the first corner once again. Clifford Roberts going towards the outside to try and get the cut back. This time on Regan Mitchell. It does not work for the number 96 Audi. So just over 2 minutes to go, and it is still to play for, Steve, isn't it?
Absolutely. Archie's showing us that he's not only capable of leading from the front, he's very, very capable at battling hard with the guys and taking it to them. You know what I mean? Archie's really pushing Regan. But it has to be said, Regan's doing a fantastic job. He's defending those lines. Yes, it's costing him a little bit of time, but he's going to maintain that last step of the podium and finishing where he does there. I believe that will pretty much, barring maybe 1 or 2 points, put him level pegging with Chris Crossman in the championship.
Oh, now the twist in the tail gets rather even more interesting for the final round at Paul Ricard, when we crown our Season 3 GT3 drivers and teams champions here on Simsport Racing. If you want to get involved, head to simsport-racing.com. You can find our relevant social media links on there for Twitter, Instagram, our Facebook group, and also our community Discord server. And we'd love to have you all along to join us for future seasons of both GT3 and GT4 competition. So less than 60 seconds to go, Steve.
And if it finishes as it is, again barring 1 or 2 points, because I'm just trying to do this on the fly, Archie will be about 60 points in front of James Hartnell. No, that's a mistake because I'm forgetting about Lucas out in the front. So yeah, he's going to get 66 points onto 369, so that'll give him 431. Is that right?
Yep.
And Archie's got 451 now, and in 4th place he will gain 51 points, so he'll be on 502.
So the driver's title will go down to the final round at Le Castellet in 2 weeks.
It will, because obviously there's a lot more points on offer there. With it being a 2-hour race, it's 100 points for the win, so definitely still on the line. As we've seen tonight, incidents can happen, and Archie, who has to be said, is sort of favourite to get on the podium, if not win every week or every round, can have a setback.
Indeed. So the timer strikes 0. That is it. We are on the 51st and final lap of round 9 of Assetto Corsa Competizione, GT3 Season 3 here at Barcelona. Let's see if we can find where our leader is out on the circuit, because I don't think we're that far away from having another new winner here at Simsport Racing, because it has been an absolute dominant display after nearly 147.5 miles of racing competition here at the Circuit de Catalunya Barcelona in Spain. We are waiting to see when Lucas Kakos comes out of New Holland for the 51st and final time, as now he comes through, and it is a win for Lamborghini. It is a win for Lucas Kakos in the number 13 here at Barcelona. Absolutely textbook, from lights to green to checkered flag. Lamborghini wins here in Spain. what a brilliant drive. James Hartnell takes second. Regan Mitchell rounds out the podium. Archie Clifford-Roberts has to wait 2 more weeks because we go to the season finale at Le Castellet in France for our 2-hour season finale ender. And now Dave Hedges comes across the line to take 7th behind Charlie Crossland and Steve Haley. And I think pretty much that could be the team's championship. I think all bar decided there, Steve.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, just to give you an idea, I've just done some calculations, and Archie now has 502 points, plus 1 for the fastest laps of 503. James Hartnell has 435. Crossman 351, Mitchell 353. So Mitchell overtakes Crossman in the championship by 2 points.
And that is a difference, I think, of 68 points between first and second in the standings.
Indeed.
Well,
with 100 points on the table for the win. And it has to be said, 88 for second, 76 for third. So if Archie finished too far down, then the points difference could get to the point where it's great enough for Hartnell to take the championship.
Yep, it all goes down to the wire in just 2 weeks' time. Whew, 90 minutes. That was a cracker, buddy.
We should do more races with 2 pit stops. I think that was awesome. That was absolutely awesome. It was some really good strategies, different strategies. Not everybody did the same. I think some of them acted on the fly, as it were, depending on what traffic they were in. And really, really was an entertaining race. It had its fair share of incidents that, the stewards will look at, but that's racing, unfortunately. It happens. But generally, that racing was absolutely awesome. And I agree with you, Steve Hindon, in the chat. Yeah, thank you, mate. Awesome race, guys. Well done.
Well, we're going to wait to see. You know what I'm going to do? Looks like we've got our top 3 waiting to jump into the interview booth. So, Steve, I'll be back with you in just a couple of moments' time when we'll close things out here at round 9 of Season 3 GT3.
Have fun.
Okay, let's have a chat with our top 3. And firstly, what a performance. Lukas Karkosz, brilliant job, mate. Pole position in quali, and then from lights out to checkered flag. You played the long game. The Lamborghini worked to your strengths, and you won by a comfortable margin. Congratulations. How are you feeling right now?
Thank you. I feel good. Good race, good pace. I think I wasn't the fastest, but pretty consistent times and good strategy. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with that.
I think really in the early stages of the race, Lukas, we saw that both Archie Clifford-Robertson and Chris Crossman were trying to get the jump onto you going into the first corner on lap 1, but they fell by the wayside. Steve Haley tried catching you up. You had a multiple amount of challenges, but you kept that Lamborghini as wide as humanly possible. But I think the biggest thing you said, which I'll speak about now, your consistency in terms of the lap times. You were running consistently in the low 145s. You were running in the high 147s at point. It seemed like you were running a long qualifying style race simulation there.
Yeah, for the first race this season, I'm pretty happy with the setup. I've had problem in previous races with oversteer in corner entry, and I think it's sorted now. So hopefully in the next races it will be similar results.
Well done, Lukas. Congratulations for tonight, and we look forward to seeing you in Le Castellet in 2 weeks.
Thanks, mate.
James Hartnell, the title fight goes to Paul Ricard in just 2 weeks' time. You are 68 points behind Archie Clifford-Roberts, obviously after that incident between himself and Chris Crossman earlier on today. But a second place finish, did you think that was a possibility?
No, especially when during qualifying it felt like I was driving a bumper car that I'd never ever sat in before. It was just weird. I could not hook it up at all, and I'm sitting there at night going, okay, let's just get some points.
And it paid I think also one of the biggest things, I think the other thing you must have said to yourself, right, well, let's also keep out of trouble, shall we?
Yeah, keep out of trouble, try and look after the tyres. I mean, Archie shaped a lot of that race because he pushed Regan and I really hard. By the way, congrats to Lucas, that was one hell of a drive. Archie pushed us both, and I could see that it was going to be tyres that were going to make it in the last 10-15 minutes. So I actually backed off a wee bit and just wanted to sit back behind and just let them ruin their tyres and then just see if I could make a difference in the pits. And I think luckily I got away with it.
Well done, James. All the very best of luck in 2 weeks at the season finale at Paul Ricard. I mean, that was a fantastic drive. I know Regan was pushing you, but well done, mate. Great job this evening.
Yeah, thanks, mate. And thanks to everybody else. It was a hell of a race.
Thank you, James. And our final interviewee this evening, Regan Mitchell. Regan, that was not easy, mate, for you, I think. You had to battle away with James, but then also Archie closing in on you 6 towards the end of the race. But still a very good performance, nevertheless.
Yeah, my heart is still pounding. Because Archie was a second of a lap quicker, and I just had to make no mistakes and not let him past, which is really hard. But finally, I have beaten Archie. I've been trying to do that all season. I did it on merit, so that's good.
Yep, so you've now got a notch on your tomahawk, and that notch just so happens to be Archie Clifford Roberts. Mate, that was a fantastic drive. Really, really well spirited, and great to see the Mercedes in the top 3. Really, really pleased for it. I hope that you're going to be able to get that pulse rate down. Maybe get a cold beverage, because I think everyone, not just you guys in the top 3, definitely deserve it.
Well done to Lucas as well.
Well done, Regan. Congratulations on tonight, and we'll see you in GT4 at Kyalami on Wednesday. Well, Steve, that was a very, very interesting. Some good comments there from our top 3 there in the interview booth, but also, just how pleased Lucas was after a dominant display from him. It was really good to see another winner on the top step.
It was, yeah, and I have to say, Lucas has raced with the Simsport community for a number of years, although he's been sort of missing for a few months for one reason or another. He's done a couple of races in this championship with us so far, but yeah, good to hear another guy that's really hooking the setups now and curing his problems. Just, you know what, we've only got one more round of this championship left, but if all these guys are getting the cars sorted, the next season's going to be absolutely epic.
Yeah, definitely. But also a few developments. Obviously, a few people might have seen what Steve has actually been posting on social media. Well, first up, next Wednesday, Kyalami. GT4 Season 2, Round 5, the penultimate round of the season before a week later we head to Laguna Seca for the season finale. But I wanted to have a brief chat because there has been a massive development. And I'm really, really pleased for the community. I'm not going to be part of this because I think at the end of the day, it's fantastic what has happened. That we've got the Jensen Team Rocket RJN endurance race with Simsport Racing, multi-class, so GT3 and GT4, 3 mandatory stops, 2 driver teams, full random weather, and it is the virtual 3 hours of Silverstone starting at 1900 British summertime on Friday next week, the 16th of October. And from what I hear, Steve, Jensen's back racing with us. There is a whole host of driving talent. There is a completely stacked out grid. And we're going to have Chris Buxton, Lewis McGlade, and Steve on commentary. And a big thank you also to MSL Motorsport Consultancy and the Virtual Reality Racing Club and Sancho Simsport for also being a part of this as well. That was very, very quick developments after the 12 hours of the Nurburgring, wasn't it, mate?
It was, buddy. Yeah, I mean, a lot of work went into the 12 hours of Nurburgring. A lot of money was raised for charity. We sort of rounded the £4,000 mark, and that link at the Just Giving page is still active. It is still open. So, donations are gratefully received for that. But yeah, the event went so well and was noticed that basically this is more or less stemmed from that, I believe, and we're moving on to the next step and having a 3-hour Silverstone 500, which is going to replicate as close as we can to British GT rules with qualifying and race. So it's going to be absolutely awesome. And as you say, we've got some. We will be releasing a driver entry list very shortly. We're just finalising that. But there are some very big names on there, and some fantastic sim racers and real world drivers in there, as well as some of the regulars from the sim racing community, from various groups and communities, it has to be said. So it's going to be one to watch, and it's going to be one awesome epic event.
And I, for one, as a spectator this time, I am absolutely looking forward to it, because I will be spectating. It's nice to actually be able to rest the pipes for a little bit as well. But I have to I have to give plaudits to Jenson Button firstly, because for his commitment, despite the 7-hour time difference between us here in the UK and obviously where he is in Los Angeles, for him to be able to first of all help support the Mind charity event for the 12 hours on the Nurburgring, but this for Simsport Racing as a whole is such a big development, and I don't think it's not just me, it's just everyone at Simsport Racing, JB, would like to say thank you ever so much for jumping on board with us. It's really, really appreciated. And for him to do something like this, a 2009 Formula One world champion with Braun GP, and then winning with Team Kunimitsu and Honda in Super GT in 2018, that just speaks the volumes of character within that guy.
Absolutely, yeah, it's awesome, and we're really pleased to be hosting it and to be part of it, as well as all the other guys that you mentioned earlier on, MSL Motorsport Consultancy, Zansho Simsport, and the Virtual Reality Racing Club. We're all coming together, and obviously our usual stream provider, Mike Yout Simply Race, will be providing the pictures for everybody. So it's going to be to the usual standards of production, and the racing will be epic as ever.
Yes, indeed it will. And I can't wait to see the virtual 3 hours of Silverstone next Friday at 1900 BST. But that's it. You've heard enough of me and Steve for the last, what is it now? Couple of hours, I think it is, mate. You'll hear our dulcet tones once again at 8 p.m. British Summer Time next Wednesday, when we head to Kyalami for the 5th and penultimate round of Season 2 GT4 here on Simsport Racing. To find out more about us, head to simsport-racing.com. And on behalf of us both, myself, Alex Goldschmidt, and Steve Proudly, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for joining us. Stay safe and enjoy the rest of your Sunday evenings. We'll see you on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Until then, goodbye.
Good night.